You've been driving for a while and you feel like you've hit a plateau and you're just not improving anymore. You've upgraded your hardware, but you're still not able to be as fast as you would like. Well, guess what? I did that too, okay? I'm as guilty as you are. And that's exactly why Racine and myself created what we call the advanced way to learn. By using the techniques that we're about to show you, we were able to win national championships, and we're now coaching real-life drivers and sim racers all across the globe. So let me tell you why you absolutely need this to improve your racing skills. On this platform, you'll go through 5 learning steps. The first one is going to be to watch video lessons so you can take in all that theory. The second step will be to answer quizzes. We've created some questions to test your knowledge. Next, you'll have to partake in challenges. Here, you'll have to prove to yourself that you can apply what you've learned. You'll go on track and you'll try to beat the instructor's lap times for sector times. Following the challenge, you'll be able to send your onboard replay so instructors and other community members can help you improve. And lastly, you can get involved in the community to meet some new teammates and learn from others. This platform is a back and forth discussion between us, the instructor, and you, the students. If you're serious about becoming the best driver out there, this is the advanced way to learn.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Week 3 of the PRL GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series rolls into the home of US Motorsports. It's Indianapolis, where we find ourselves for the third installment of what should be, hopefully, a thrilling 9-round season. Cannot wait to get both the Fixed and the Sprint Series races underway. Of course, we'll be starting with the Fixed Series. My name up in the RaceSpotTV commentary box is Darren Thacker. Joining me tonight is David Haynes, all the way from Australia. David, welcome in Indianapolis, a track where you often see some great GT3 action, and nearer the start of the season as well, this could be quite a cracker.
Yeah, well, it's relatively flat all around here compared to a lot of other famous American road racing tracks, but it doesn't lack for action. It doesn't lack for a long front straight that you can slipstream down into a challenging braking zone and passing opportunity at turn 1. Some really flowing section through the middle of the lap like we see here. And even the last 3 corners, pretty critical for your run onto the front straight, and you can flow pretty well through there. And of course, surrounded by grandstands, history, and a great museum.
Yeah, indeed, and a bit of a change-up when we go to Barcelona next week, but we've really been hitting the classics. Monza, Circuit de la Sarthe last week, Indianapolis this week. It's a really nice, compact calendar. Interlagos is on there, Watkins Glen, Fuji, Sebring, some really, really good international circuits in this calendar. Cannot wait to get on with it, but looking towards the end of the season, ending at Fuji and Sebring could really be quite interesting, because they're circuits where quite a lot can happen and quite a lot can change around in the championship there.
Yeah, super smooth racetrack here, but Sebring, no, that's way, way bumpier, real challenge. So it does sort of throw some of the form out the window, exactly how everyone adjusts to that track. A lot of pavement changes there. So it's a good looking schedule of 9 rounds.
And Sebring reminding me to say that we're thinking of all of you guys down in Florida as we hope you stay safe in the face of Hurricane Milton in the next couple of days. But looking at the championship, GT3 Fixed Series Pro standings, and they're led by Jeff Calfold, but there isn't really much for lead. It's tied with William Benson at the top. Isaiah Osborne follows in tow and only 6 points back, with Tyler Graff not too far back himself. Matt Schreff, David Bush, Felix Feliz, Sully Sad, Park Hilliard and Eric Terry Haag are the top 10 drivers in the early stages of the season. And in the AM standings, it's Luke Davis who holds a bit of a lead. It's a relatively comfortable margin in the grand scheme of things here at PRL, 8 points ahead of Colin McKenzie, although that can change. Carsten Quint is in third with Joel Peguero and Buck Hamilton in the top 5. It's Dino Vela, Robert Jeffries, Thomas Rep, Ryan Chandler and Marshall Hurtado, the other drivers inside the top 10. In the team standings, it's a bit of a lead for Lunatic Jelly. They've got a nice margin ahead of Jeff's Broken Wing Racing, with SGE, LFGA, PWFG not too far back. That's not a mouthful at all. Lunatic Peanut Butter is in 4th, with Solpec Parabola Racing in 5th. It's SGE Pioneer, B&O Kartamania, Madworks, Bump and Run and E3 Sim Racing, the other drivers, other teams I should say, inside the top 10. And of course, before we get into the action, we have to thank our sponsors who make these broadcasts possible. At Advanced Sim Racing, owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision 5 coupon code. Racebox Sim Racing offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racers, for sim racing enthusiasts. From the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision 5 coupon code. ButtKicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every single game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself into the driver's seat with ButtKicker. Radness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Murad. Mr. Hedge Sim Racing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. It is of course a great addition to any sim room. And Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on all of their socials to become a better driver. And I'm sure you can follow them on pretty much any social that you will be frequenting. Right then, we thank all of our sponsors to make this broadcast possible and to get the broadcast really underway. We, of course, are in qualifying in the early stages of tonight's event. Compared to some of the tracks that we may see later on into the season, how important do you think qualifying is going to be here, David? Compared to the likes of maybe Barcelona next week?
Well, I don't think of passing as being especially difficult around here, but I do think of turn 1 as potentially being messy. So those are the two things you factor in. You think, how important is qualifying? And so somewhere in the middle, I think. I'm not going to say, like everyone says, Monaco qualifying is super important. That's because passing is difficult there. So you have a lot of emphasis on qualifying. And then other circuits where turn 1, turn 2 can be very messy, you need a good qualifying there. I think only one of those things is majorly true here. So I'd say if you want to win, be in the top 6.
Yeah, and that's working well if you're Brett Thurman and Jared Keane. I mean, there's a couple of drivers up there that maybe we're not expecting after the first couple of rounds, and some drivers that will be wanting to be a little bit further up the order. I mean, looking up and down the timing page, very keen, I will notice William Fenton is not there. I'm going to double check the timing page just to make sure he's here this evening, but he'll need a lap time on the board quickly if he is, but I don't believe he is here looking at the timing page, which could be a little bit of a hit to his championship aspirations. Regardless, though, Jeff Kalfold, tied at the top in terms of the championship, only 6th at the moment, would like to be a little bit further up, but also a shout out's got to go to Ross Sortino because he's doing a really good job at the moment in the AM category. Currently got 4 cars between himself and his closest rival.
Yeah, that's always good to have. Whenever you've got equal machinery but different driver brackets, when you can sort of outperform your bracket, you put yourself in a really, really good and competitive situation. So that is working out very well at the moment for Colin McKenzie. But not bad for Luke Davies either. Luke Davis either in that category.
Yeah, they're doing a good job, aren't they? Getting themselves inside the top 16 overall in terms of the qualifying at the moment. Andrew Trickett is coming around the final couple of quarters. He looks like he's looking to improve. The Canadian flag emblazoned on that rear wing. Is it going to fire him towards the line even quicker? I mean, Indianapolis probably as close to a home race as he's going to be able to get this season. With no race at Motorsport on this particular calendar, but he's going to be in P3 for the time being, and we'll see if he can get any further up in the closing stages. Ross Sortino looking to put even more gap between himself and the rest of the AM class. Can he do it? Can he improve just that little bit? I don't believe he can, and will stay P9 for the time being, but you can see how tight some of these gaps are. Felice down to Lucas and Nguyen, which is 4 places between them, 0.08 of a second, splitting 8th and 11th at the time being. Great to see some really close battles. Colin McKenzie tied with the time with Sully Sad, and he's looking to try and improve just that little bit in that Bright Pick Lunatic car, and the Ferrari looks pretty good around this circuit, and it's looking pretty good under his control up in P2 in class. I mean, we're getting towards the final stages. I mean, this could get tight. I mean, we are looking to see if anybody can improve towards the end, but getting that lap time at the end of the session can be so good for the confidence, can't it?
Yep, and you don't give your rivals much time to respond either if you can put in a really strong lap late on in the session. And what we saw on board with Andrew Trickett was not gaining much time through the first sector, and that was pretty tough. So once you're up on a lap time, you can play with your mind exactly how hard do I want to push the rest of the way around this lap? Do I continue to keep pushing and pushing and pushing to improve? Or do you kind of see an improvement in the first sector as an opportunity to just drive sensibly through the second and third sector and try to bank it? And then, of course, traffic, always something to talk about, something we're going to talk about in the racing here as well. But in qualifying, I think it's not helping McKenzie now. I think he's backed out of that one.
And of course, sometimes we see some closed sessions where drivers are on their own on the circuit, but here, where they've got to, find the gaps and they set their qualifying laps around each other, makes it that little bit more difficult for them. McKenzie, though, to the line of 25.591, not going to be good enough to improve. It was about 0.8 down on the fastest time overall, but there's still a little bit of time for these drivers to set another run. Jared Keane looks like he's trying to get onto pole position. There's only 200s between the top 2 at this stage, and he looks like he's getting a nice bit of a tow down this backstretch.
Yeah, a tow is nice right up until you're underneath the rear wing of the car in front, and then it stops becoming helpful and starts becoming hurtful. And so the last lap for Keane was a second away from his best, and I think this will also be no improvement just based on how close he got to the Corvette in front.
Yeah, it was suggested he wouldn't be able to get any faster on this lap, but he may be able to get the one more timed lap here. And we saw last week, didn't we, at the Circuit de la Sarthe, how you have to forgive me. Someone did spin there at the final corner. Jeff Calfold actually popping up into third. One of the championship leaders, 1,000th away from Jared Keane. There is nothing to split those two, apart from a couple of millimeters at that point. Incredible to see. Jared Keane not improving this time, but will he be able to set a lap time right at the end? We will see. I was just going to say that we saw last week at the Circuit de la Sarthe, the last time to be set on the timing board, with I think 3.5 minutes after the timer hit 0 at Le Mans, we saw a time get popped up into the top 5, and used to rule out that happening here again. Tyler Graf looking like he's trying to improve. I don't think he will. In fact, yes, he will. A little bit of a delay on the timing tower. He's gone fast in provisional pole as the checkered flag flies. 1/10 of a second he's got in hand.
I'd take that as a commentator's curse any day rather than it going the other way. Yeah, he goes to the top. I think I was also seeing Jared Keane improving on this lap as well, and now we know that there's hardly 1/10 between first through to fourth place at the moment. Keane will really, really want to find an improvement here, because now it's only just ahead of Calfold, but no longer on the front row.
Yeah, and there's really not much time for anybody to make any moves up the field. You can just see how tight some of these times are. Brett Thurman is 1/10 off, but you've got Jared Keane and Jeff Calfold, 1,000th between them on the second row. It just really couldn't be tighter at the front. Solly Saad, Colin McKinsey, nothing between them for 13th and 14th. Exactly what we want to see here in the GT3 Fixed Series. It's what makes the Fixed Series so exciting. It's fair to say Jared Keane, 24.9, not going to be enough to improve. It would have been a lap good enough for the top 6, I do believe, but not good enough to improve on his current position of P3. Nicholas Johnson may be one of the last drivers to set a lap time. Can he get himself any closer to pole and get himself maybe into the top 10, up towards the line? It's such a long run. You're willing the car forward with every sinew that you've got, but I don't think it's going to be enough, and he will stay in P12 at the end of the session.
Yeah, so quickly coming to an end of everyone who's on a lap that could still improve them. Get on Sortino there from the AM class up in the 9th outright. Really strong. Oh, that's how you do pit entry. Yeah, it is, and a great delivery on that car for Joshua Lewis. You got to give credit to some of these guys when they go away in the short off-season that we have in PRL and do a little bit of paintwork. They look great as the car looks like it's levitating. It's probably just the sim more than anything else, but that does bring the end of qualifying to us, and Tyler Graf has taken pole position here, very impressively indeed, and I think we're going to be able to see his lap time coming up very shortly. Of course, Indianapolis, it's a very open circuit, but some of these corners can be quite compact in terms of how you've got to run them. Looking at this particular section of the circuit where you get those the ambient shots there, you really have to pick a line through, and if you're a little bit offline, you can really feel the effects. This is the pole time then for Tyler Graf in the number 77 car. Tyler Graf coming into this race with a little bit to make up. 2 good results in the opening couple of rounds, but looking to push on, and David, this is the kind of lap to really put him towards the front of the field. Yeah, very precise to get to the apex curb at turn 1 there. It's a bit of a snap coming out of 2, but that lets you know that you're at the limit. Exactly where he was. And then from turn 3 here, your run out's pretty important, because you'll be looking to keep it absolutely flat through this little quick change direction. If you're side by side through there on the opening lap, maybe not flat out, but here in qualifying, that's what you're aiming for. And then also carry speed down the back straight to bring you into the closing half of the lap.
Yeah, and let's see as he gets his way into the end of this straight, bouncing over that inside curb. So high, so aggressive, some of these curves at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Run it all the way over the right, then the left. They're much kinder through there. And then take as much liberty as you can through this right to get you back out towards the banking. Try and take all of the curve on the outside as we're seeing Tyler Graf, and then hook it back to the inside. Get it up the slight banking as you make your way between what is normally turns 1 and 2 in the oval, and get yourself turned in a little bit off camber and a little bit downhill through there as you find the apex, rotate the car through the left, and then it's that short run round. Well, I say the short run, it's the long run round the final corner. Keep it turning in, keep your foot pinned as much as you dare. Don't let the car wash out too far, and get it up towards the line. And that is what made, or that's the lap that gave Tyler Graf pole position in a race where he's looking to get himself firmly into the championship picture. 2 top 5s last season, 2 top 5s this season, and looking to go one better so early on, make it 3 from 3 in terms of top 5s in season 4 of 2024.
Take another look at this. I think you do get a bit of a helpful toe off the car in front in these situations here for Colin McKenzie, fastest AM qualifier.
Yeah, and let's see what he can do, because, I mean, coming through the opening sector, he is getting a nice little helping hand, isn't he, through these opening corners, bouncing his way over, and again, keeping nice and close to the car in front. You know, you may get a little bit of that aero wash as you're getting in towards this second half of the lap, particularly this left-right combination, and McKenzie, though, using all of the track, and you can see not taking as much of that inside curve as we saw from Tyler Graf, but still taking a lot of liberty on the inside of these corners where we saw such a dramatic spin, didn't we? Half spin from, it was Colton Herter a couple of years ago in the wet. No such shenanigans for Colin McKenzie, and at this point you've only got a couple of corners to go, but they're tricky corners to end the lap, aren't they?
Yeah, what I noticed is this turn 12 here, some drivers go all the way to the outside there, some keep it tight through the exit there to give themselves a wide entry into turn 13 here, which feels like the last corner once you get to the power. So I noticed from some of the other onboards, drivers staying tight through the exit of 12 to give the full width of turn 13 on the entry. But your fastest qualifiers from both categories using all of the exit of turn 2, even if it compromised them a little bit into 13.
Yeah, and great lap there from Colin McKenzie to get himself into prime position in class. He'll be starting a little bit in the mid-pack. Here is the starting grid then for round 3 of the season. Tyler Graf will lead us to pole ahead of Brett Thurman, but the times are close. Jared Keane and Jeff Calfold, second row, a thousandth to split them, with Andrew Trickett and Kyle Colbert just behind them on row 3. We'll roll through to row 4 as Felix Felice and Eric Terry Haag make an appearance in the top 10, with our poleman, Ross Sortino, I should say, 9th place overall and top of the class. Matt Schreff is in P10. Lucas Nguyen and Nicholas Johnson on row 6 as we continue to roll through the top 12, only half a second splitting them, with Sully Sadd and Colin McKenzie nothing to split them on the 7th row. Isaiah Osborne and Tony Costello not too far back on row 8. It's Luke Davis and Park Hilliard on row 9, as again the times stay close, with Pete Mejia and Joshua Lewis rounding out the top 20 and the top 10 rows. Andrew Venaro and Ryan Chandler 21st and 22nd, with Buck Hamilton and Dale Pedersen rounding out row number 12. Luke Christian, Waldo Walden, Marshall Hurtado and Carsten Quint, Thomas Rep and David Bush are the top 30 in this race, and again you can see less than 9/10 in the top 30 in an incredibly tight qualifying. It's Jay Steffi and Clarence Rosa on row 16, with Kevin Bergquist, Robert Jeffries, Dino Vela and Reagan Chandler on row 17 and 18. They keep coming with Alex Wright and Sam Smeltzer, Jeff Lubick and David Morse top 40, Ryan Luna and Ian Kamana on the outside looking into that top 40, and towards the back of the field they may avoid some of the carnage, but they're going to be joined by Mark Bray, Barry Cochran, Sean Mulholland and Jake Vasconcelos. The 46 cars we have on the grid, absolutely packed, isn't it, David? This is going to be quite an interesting lap one. I think it's going to be quite busy, and I don't think we're really going to know where to look on the opening stations.
I'm not sure that dog can reach the pedals, so hopefully it's a human driving.
Yeah, but
there is that.
I'm not too cool.
Very, very
pedals,
the hybrids.
Yeah, the history here is really significant, isn't it? Because the drivers here, even though we're in the sim world, it does add a little bit of an extra feather in the hat, doesn't it? Just to say that I've won at Indianapolis.
Just visually, it's kind of intimidating the whole way around. The whole place is surrounded by these grandstands. It's like you're in the middle of the Coliseum, but the Coliseum's big enough to fit 4 kilometers of racetrack into. It's not, open fields out there or anything. The whole way around, you're penned in this racing Coliseum.
It feels a bit like a hippodrome, doesn't it? To your point. But really looking forward to getting this race underway. We're going to get that full formation lap. We're not going to be able to you know, chop off a couple of the sectors and just have the final sector behind the pace car, but going all the way around. But it allows us to talk about the championship this season and the bigger picture, because Jeff Calfold here tonight, of course, with one of the wins so far this season. Up to tonight, William Benson took both of the poles, but not here tonight. He's going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage throughout the rest of the season, cannot really afford any slip-ups at all. For the likes of Tyler Graff that come into this race P4 to get on pole as well, this is a massive opportunity. How much pressure do you think he's going to put himself under, albeit so early in the season, to really deliver on this pole?
I think a normal amount of pressure. I don't think you can think at round 3 of 9 that it's the end if you only convert pole to a podium here. But on the same, you know, if you got qualifying pace, then you hope you can convert that to a decent bit of race pace, and especially in a sprint format like this.
Yeah, and we're coming through turns 5 and 6, the little, you know, flick chicane, if you could call it that, on towards this back straight. Lots of instances that we could see down there of drivers attempt to go too wide, going to get a little bit dangerous if they try to do so, but opening lap, especially when we've got 46 cars on the grid, I don't think some of these guys are going to have a choice if they find themselves about to go too wide into that chicane. You cannot take off too much of that at minimum speed through that corner, because it's going to hurt you all the way down towards this braking zone. And I think combined with turn 1, coming down here is probably the next best overtaking spot on the racetrack, wouldn't you say?
Particularly if you get a mistake out of your rival through turn 4, or if they have to lift off through that 5 and 6 flick chicane, or flickane as I think I'm going to be calling it from now on. Yes, turn 1, turn 7, 2 best overtaking opportunities by far. They're deliberately quite tight with a tall curb on the inside. It's just one of the places you're meant to think about, you know, having a bit of a go for your next position.
But we are getting towards the opening couple of corners, and I still wonder how much we're going to see in terms of the action down at turn 1. How do you think all the cars are going to be able to make it through the opening sector, or do you think we're going to see a few casualties?
I think they'll all get through going forwards, but I don't think they'll all get through on the pavement. How about a little bit of grass mowing on the inside of turn 2?
Yeah, that is a place where we're going to see a couple of drivers bail out, and if we don't, then I don't think I've ever seen racing at this track like it. We're about to get going, though, for the first race of the evening. It's the GT3 Fixed Series here in Indianapolis. It's your Tuesday night dose of PRL action, and we're back at the Yard of Bricks. We've been here so far this season in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge, but it's the GT3's turn to show us what they can do, and Tyler Graff is getting us underway pretty early out of the final corner, catching a couple of the drivers unaware, as we are going green here in Indianapolis. Fantastic start from the pole sitter, catching everybody napping, taking that inside line, and will get us towards turn 1 with a very comfortable lead. Battle for P3 though, that second row slipped by 1,000th in qualifying, slipped by nothing as they go door to door into the opening chicane. Right around the outside, is that going to work? Not quite, and nearly going into the grass as we see everybody else make their way through. A couple of drivers going a little bit wide in towards turn 2. They're all going to get their way through, and I think we've only just seen the 1 or 2 cars bail their way over turn 2, and an incredibly clean start there, David.
Yeah, the field gets sort of bunched a little bit through the turn 13, and your pole sitter went so early that I think it has spread them out a lot, and that's helped us through turn 1. It's not helping us through the turn 5 and 6 chicane there, as some cars are right out through the grass there, but a great conversion of the pole position from your pole sitter.
Stunning stuff really from Tyler Graff, catching everybody napping, including myself. Did not expect him to go that early, but it has worked an absolute treat for him. Jeff Calfold getting up into P3, got a little bit of work to do, 2 seconds behind the leader, and that gap is growing out of it as Tyler Graff continues to pull away. Further back in the pack, we're seeing Ross Sortino in P7 doing a good job. They're side by side though as they make their way back on towards the banking. Still some frantic action towards the back of the field. There's 46 cars, they just keep coming. You think you've seen all of them fly their way through, and then there's a couple more that fight in towards this tight right hand. They're getting pinched on the inside at the apex of turn 12, but everybody making their way through safely. As up at the front, this is Jarek and Jeff Calfold going side by side, but at the same time we're seeing spins in the back.
Yeah, so you've got to look outside of your top 6 to see any movement yet, but oh, there's going to be some.
Yeah, big snap of oversteer. Jeff Calfold managing to pick his way through it just about, but did not look comfortable in slipping back to P6. Not what he would have wanted in the early stages of this race, especially. Oh, with title rival William Benson not here, Matt Schreff is going to go around, and he is going to be dropping all the way down the field. Drivers flying through, and he's going to really pay the price. Note on Ross Sortino losing a couple of positions himself. He's going to come under pressure a little bit in terms of the AND category. There were drivers off in the background. There's Sully Sad fighting with Jared Keane. This is the 64 off of the road. It's all going off early on here.
Bumper of that McLaren is opposite side of the track to what the race car is now, so that's a decent bit of damage there.
Good, is it? You don't really want too much damage in the early stages of the race. You really want to be keeping that pace up and trying to get into a rhythm if you can with so many cars around you. This is what it was. Clarence Rosa getting a little bit of a tap round there and getting it stuck towards the barrier. Here's Ryan Luna in towards turn 13. This is the spin we kind of caught towards the end, and he nearly ended up in the pit lane, and that's not really where you want to be, especially when it was a little spin on your own there.
Yeah, quite a few cars struggling with that rear grip. So you see two McLarens there that get to one of the tighter corners and then just don't seem to have enough. And here's a little bit of, oh no, that's way off the road for both of them.
Yeah, and Jared Keane on the inside there. You can see there we go. Jared Keane, he's lost a heap of positions. There may have been contact. I was looking at the replay of what we were talking about possibly happening at turn 5 and 6, and it ended up materialising, but not good at all for the 222 driver, and he's going to drop right towards the bottom end of the field. There's another driver off the track into the barrier down at turn number 3. There's another driver spinning around in the middle of the corner. There's drivers going left and right. I mean, this is frantic. Drivers at the back of the field have just had to pick their way through and try and survive. This is what happened at turn 5 and 6, and that's teammates coming together. That's not good.
Yeah, friendly fire. So you've got a couple of cars going side by side through that part there where it's difficult to pick your reference points if you can't see where the chicane curbs are. And that thing is got so much suspension damage, even at half speed it won't even make the corner, so quite a few damaged cars out there. And what I'm going to see here is that turn 1 and 2 has been super difficult for these teammates in the Porsches. Keane and Calfold both losing positions on different laps around there.
Yeah, and Keane it was getting a little bit of a helping hand around there at turn 1. This is what we saw in the background before Ross Sortino, one of the drivers. Ross Sortino, sorry, he's just clicked in my mind. Of course, leader, pole sitter in the ad category, coming to blows and really not having the kind of side of the race that he would want. Luke Davis is now up into P11, which is the lead in the class. Colin McKinsey's there as well. That's Sam Smeltzer going around. That was the car we saw off in the background of the shot that I mentioned not too long ago. But back up to the live pictures, we've got a battle for P6. It's being led by Eric Terry Haag, but there is some really quite heavy battling going on in behind. This is Isaiah Osborne in the Ferrari. Is he going to be able to get down the inside of the number 80 of Lucas? We'll have to see. Park Hilliard's got a great view of this as they make their way in towards the middle sector, but also great to see such clean racing for the time being as we get our way through the middle sector.
Yeah, a lot of McLarens, a lot of Porsches, but you got just a couple of the Audis, Mustangs, a few other things out here represented. So each of them will have unique little strengths. The outright pace seems good for a McLaren, but we've also seen a few drivers struggle to handle it, particularly off that race start where it seemed like there were quite a few cold tyres.
We're looking at some of these drivers thinking that, who's been able to get the car up to speed the best and the quickest, and a few answers to that would include looking at some of the positions gained. I'll be honest, there aren't too many that have gained a load, just a lot of drivers gaining quite a few, so not too many big jumps in terms of the places gained, but a lot of drivers who are dropping far further down the order than they would want to be. The likes of Jeff Lubick in the AM class, started P17 in class, up to P9, so nearly side through half of the field. That is, looking at my timing tower, or my timing screen I should say, the best start in the pack. So shout out to Lubick there, having a good launch and maybe getting that car up to temperature a little bit more. Maybe also picking his way through some of these little incidents the best, because it can be so easy, can't it, just to get caught up in one of these little moments that the drivers are going to have. And drivers can develop as a little bit of a skill to pick their way through in the early stages of a race.
Yeah, once they're racing like this, you need to worry not just about the car in front of you, but 2-3 cars up the road could get into an incident that ends up involving you. We've seen that from a few of the replays early on as well. It's not necessarily 1 car or 2 cars in front of you, but trouble can start a long way up the racetrack and then unfold.
And that's going to be in the back of the driver's mind all the way through the final 28 minutes of this race. Of course, only 35 minutes to kick us off for the evening here in the Sprint Series. We'll see what the Fixed Series throws up for us, but we'll have to see if it can match the kind of great start at the front that we had, particularly from Tyler Graff. That launch absolutely immaculate, and he's been able to hold the lead ever since then. Colin McKenzie is looking to take the lead in the AM class, and he's going to have to do it well to overtake Luke Davis, who's a couple of cars in front, but much closer than I think he would have expected, of course, as our pole sitter in the AM class has since fallen down the order a touch.
Yeah, I didn't see exactly where Mackenzie lost a few of the spots early on, but Luke Davis got through. Mackenzie seems to have found the speed again, and this is the battle right here between them, with a couple of those pro cars mixed in between. It does look like
it's not fun. I mean,
one holding it together at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not particularly fun, is it, when you're racing in this kind of situation? If you're Ryan Chandler, you're trying to race with Colin McKenzie, and the driver behind you, they may be pressuring you for the position, but it's not going to cost you any points, is it? I mean, that can be so frustrating as a driver, to be involved in a battle and then kind of get a driver in the middle, but it doesn't really make any difference in the grand scheme of things.
I've been seeing that sun just coming and going from behind the clouds as well, so I wonder if it doesn't just act a little changeable, which could be tough.
And the track conditions may fluctuate a little bit for these guys in the early stages, maybe throughout the rest of the race, actually, as we have 26 minutes still on the clock. A very long way still to go, despite all of the frantic action that we've seen in the opening few minutes. But we are starting to see, we have seen in the last few minutes, this kind of this more single file, slightly gapping out theme, haven't we, to the race? We've seen it in the between second and third particularly. Brett Thurman's been able to keep up with Tyler Graff, but Andrew Trickett dropping back a touch. We are seeing those little groups forming though, aren't we? First and second, and then third, fourth and fifth. Eric Derryhawk a little bit on his own, and then Sully Saad down basically in a big long train. It kind of focuses the drivers into the battles that they're going to be thinking about for the rest of the race, isn't it?
Yep, starting to sort of just clump into a few little groups throughout. And this is with the race leaders. That McLaren does not seem afraid of taking a big chunk of the curbs, and then it seems to land and plant very well. So Tyler Graff's been using that very much so at turn 7, and then approaching turn 1, something to keep an eye out for. Porsche's obviously going to have its own different little strength. I think the Porsche's definitely more planted in the rear end, but then look at just, yep, big snack size bite of the curb.
Hitting as much as he can just to try and gain any kind of advantage in terms of shortening off the corner. Of course, that risk does then come maybe losing a little bit more pace than you were otherwise expecting. Through the chicane at 5 and 6 and on towards this back stretch, Brett Thurman, you have to say, nowhere near close enough to make a bit of a scent here. The slipstream effect is working, but it's not drastic, is it? Drivers that really have to be right on the rear wing coming through turn 5 and 6 to be able to make a move down into the chicane. I think this is something the drivers are going to be, feeling out, and we might see them try to adapt with this information later on in the race to try and force an overtake maybe in the closing stages of this one.
And we saw from onboards that I don't think the gearing is optimal for the Porsche. A lot of them were basically just getting close to hitting the limiter in 5th at the end of the long straight. So then the gears are a little bit too long, a little bit too far spaced in that car, whereas most of the others, they get the full use of their 6 gears. So I wonder if the straights were much longer, be good for the Porsche, or a little bit shorter and you could have shorter gears, but sort of intermediate length, the sort of 800 meters or so down towards turn 1 off the final corner, and then similar. It's just not optimal for the Porsche.
it's not the best, is it? But drivers clearly trying to offset that maybe slight disadvantage with how they drive the car, and it's working okay for a couple of the guys, not less Brett Thurman and Andrew Trickett, but Thurman, of course, not able to kind of get that launch he so desires off of the corner to try and get after Tyler Graff for the lead. Here is Ryan Chandler. He's really been searching on the rear end of Colin McKenzie for a little while now as they run their way through the opening sector. Chandler looking for a bit more of a swinged entry in towards turn number 4 to try and get the run through the chicane down in towards turn 7, but it doesn't look like it's worked too much, and you can just see that, you know, that extra tenth or so that you can lose through that chicane makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've seen his Corvette looking for a couple of different racing lines as well, so even down the front straight he was doing some slightly different stuff.
That does get close, isn't it? Down in towards turn 7. Big battling ongoing here in the background. Matt Scherf having a very good view of this in the number 43. He's down in 22nd overall, but he's looking at these guys fighting it out hard. I mean, not too far in front, of course, is Pete Messier, who is in the AM category and fighting with Thomas Rett. This is Dale Pedersen getting so close to the rear end going in towards turn 12. That's on the back of Pete Messier, the AM driver, fighting with Thomas Rett. But leading this little train is Lou Christian, who has maintaining a little bit of that gap back to the drivers behind who could overtake him in terms of the Pro Championship. But the way the points work here in the GT3 Fixed Series, it doesn't necessarily make the biggest of differences, as we might be seeing a move being formed in towards turn 1. Very much an inside line here for Matt Scherf. Can he claim the corner? Yes, he can. Can he claim the position, though? That's a different story. Walking around the outside at turn 2, difficult to do, but he'll have the inside for turn 3. And the 43 thinks he's done it, but he's got a little bit more work to do, because they're still going to be side by side as they get on towards this 5-6 chicane.
And just a little bump on the way in there, and it was getting the curb off the exit of turn 2 that didn't help the drive there. It stacks it all up. This is Jared Keen's perspective, which way to go. Apparently space opening up to the right there. Apparently a little bit more space to the right-hand side.
Yeah, and there is clearly, there is quite a long way or quite a big width of this circuit compared to some of the tracks we will go to, so there definitely is room for these moves, but drivers are being a little bit respectful, and there's some drivers being a little bit more forceful for the moves. We've not seen too much of that just yet in the opening 15 minutes or so. We're going to jump up to this battle, which has kind of become the leading battle in the AM category. All of a sudden, we've got the top 3 running line of stern. Andrew Vanara is splitting up the top 3 with Buck Hamilton, but this has really become quite an important fight in the AM category, with a few of these drivers really keen to get the results pretty early on into the season. Mind you, Luke Davies leads the championship here. Colin McKenzie second in the championship, but for Ryan Chandler, he comes into this one 9th. He would be very pleased to pick up these points and really take some points off the championship contenders at this stage of the season.
And he did it again down the front straight, just something different, not following in line, a little bit wide now through 4. Definitely still thinking, when's the opportunity going to come now that we're into 20 minutes to go? Earlier on, it was Raya Osborne that seemed to be just backing up this group of cars a little bit. Now it might be Nicholas Johnson.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if Nicholas Johnson becomes a bit of a bottleneck whilst these guys fight it out for the lead in the AM category, because Nicholas Johnson, in his mind, is fighting over P11. For Luke Davies, Colin McKenzie and Ryan Chandler, it means a whole of a lot more, and they're going to be fighting at it quite hard, I suggest, into the closing stages. Albeit we might see Colin McKenzie and Luke Davies a little bit kinder to each other, as they may do to drivers who weren't their teammate. Through the final couple of corners we will go, though, nearing half distance already in this race. And I mean, the big themes that we're running with so far is that Tyler Graff and Brett Thurman clearly have the pace over the rest, but the AM class is anybody's game at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. They do get a little bit more separation from some of the non-AM cars around them, just to let the AM drivers try to fight it out. And you see Sully Saab's dropping some spots on the timing column there, 2 of them in a row.
It's not what you want to see if you are Sully. Maybe a little bit of a wide moment at the opening couple of corners because he's not, let's say, that close to the rear end of Park Hilliard and Lucas Nguyen in the number 80 car. Off they go towards turn 7, running all the way down. One of the big overtaking spots on the circuit. Will it become an overtaking opportunity for Colin McKinsey? Looking for it down the straight. They're not actually going to go for it in practice when they get onto the brakes. And these three in the lead of the AM category still running line of 10. They've surely got to start to fight at some point, but you think they're just holding back for the time being.
Yeah, I can see the thought process from Mackenzie or Chandler. Like, let's just get a bit more space to some of the other cars before we start to try to trip over each other. And this will be where Saad lost 2 positions.
Let's see what happened to Sully then. Down in towards turn 1, getting a bit of a hit. Maybe the car bouncing off the inside curb there, not helping it whatsoever on Sully Saad. A little bit of a passenger in that collision. I think it's fair to say he's not going to be terribly pleased about that one.
No, because he's sort of half covering turn 1, thinking you're too far back, and then the other car really dives into that narrow gap, bounces a bit of the curb, really shoves him out wide through 1, and then having put him out there in 1, he loses another spot. When I stand corrected, maybe he can reach the pedals.
Yeah, well, he's reached the brake pedal earlier than the other two because he broke in a much more contained routine than the others who just went a little bit too far deep. But what a move that is in the end for the dog in the race, which is Jake Vasconcelos. Of course, he started really down towards the back of the field. He is one of the pro drivers, and he's up 8 spots officially, but that doesn't really paint the full picture because he was outside the top 40, now into 22nd place, having a great day on the recovery drive.
Yeah, sometimes it's not about the size of the dog in the fight. We go on board with Keane, who's got to try to work back through the field. And again, I'm just watching these gear shifts going. It didn't get to 6th gear on the back straight before turn 7, and I think he was hardly touching 6th on the way into 1. So it's just not optimal on the gearing here.
No, for Jared Keane, he's just trying to get every ounce out of this, isn't he? Oh, he's coming to the pit lane. And this is something interesting to think about because obviously pit stops are likely to be happening soon. We've seen some busy pit lanes in the opening couple of rounds. We've passed half distance, and this could get busy on the next lap, but it's fair to say an early stop for these guys, right?
Backed off a little bit before the start of the pit lane speed there as well, so you could do just a little better than that. But it's tough when you're following another car in, and that's why sometimes you don't want to pit following another or multiple cars in, because you get a checkup on the way into pit entry and it costs you a lot of time when you can't attack the lane entry like you'd like.
Yeah, and the lane exit's a little bit difficult here as well, something we haven't really touched on, but it does kind of half spit you out right into the thick of it at turn 2, and we're going to have to see how that blend works out for a lot of these guys. But I'm expecting we are going to see a very busy pit lane in the next couple of laps. I think Tyler Graff and Brett Thurman are either approaching it now or have gone past. In fact, I'm sure they've gone past now, so they're not coming in to the box. The next group of anti-ticket, I think, have now gone through, so clearly some earlier stops from the guys that we saw go a lap ago, and nobody taking the option to come into the pit lane this time around. Everyone leaving it out on the long finger a bit at the moment.
So this is a bit of action for the AM class and how the Corvette of Ryan Chandler got in between the Ferraris of Luke Davis and Colin McKenzie, and now are you getting what you'd hoped for? A little bit of fight in the for the race win and in the top 3.
Yeah, and it's good to see, but that is not good to see. That is Lucas Nguyen in that Audi car not having the best of turn 1s. Maybe able to get back past Joshua Lewis, but not in the end as they make their way through turn 3. Maybe sticking a nose up the inside at turn 4. Nothing doing there for the number 80 car, and so disappointing for him to drop down the field, giving even more points to the likes of Eric Terry Haag, who is just gaining up the field without doing too much. This was what happened. You've got to say a bit of a mistake in his own making there, wasn't it?
Yeah, perhaps from even further back than on one of the previous moves, and therefore on that time it didn't work. He got squeezed across the line to the inside, and the apex didn't open up and he went across the curb and into the side of the BMW.
Yeah, unfortunate really to have this, well, I say this late on in the race. We've still got 30 minutes to go, but the point still stands. Pitters, though, this is going to be interesting. Brett Thurman, one of our 2 leaders, is in the box for the SRT yellow team. We'll see him trundle his way down and get it stopped on the marks, but you do lose a heap of time here at Indianapolis when making your pit stops. You can see a few more drivers coming in. It is getting a little bit busier, but not the kind of consensus in terms of which pit lap to go for that we've seen in the previous 2 weeks.
What you do have is a very, very wide pit lane here because they approach at 230 miles an hour in the 500, and they need big pit boxes for 33 cars in that. And then at these speeds on the road course, it just gives you lots and lots of real estate to play with.
Yeah, and I mean, it really does give you a bit more of an opportunity, as that's an emerging from the pit lane, one of our leaders, just about keeping it inside the white lines, I do believe, but you can really see how it does spit you out a touch. This is the number 20, sorry, the P20 man, the number 75 of Ryan Chandler, as they make their way out of the pit lane side by side as they get onto the gas. Who's going to be able to win this race down in towards turn 1? Of course, you're not going to take your traditional line in the end. It's going to be the driver on the inside. I think that's Luke Evans as they make their way out of the pit box. But there is Tyler Graff. He's going around again. I mean, he's really keeping it out there for a while, maybe trying to shorten off that pit stop, but this is where we could see a bit of an overlap between our 2 leaders, isn't it?
Well, if you're not catching traffic, and it's all just opening up in front of you, then you would stay out if you could. So I think it can be a good strategy. Some of the others in the mid-pack, they're thinking, maybe don't need to stretch it out if it's just going to put you into more traffic to pit. But this is certainly the parade down pit lane.
Yeah, so all the tents up as well in pit road, showing a very busy pit lane for the 46 drivers we have here. Another little race off pit road is Kyle Colbert and Jeff Calfold. Jeff Calfold a little bit quicker in the stop. Is it going to help him just to keep in front? I think it is. Inside line at turn 1. He'll keep that spot, and one of our championship leaders, in fact officially our championship leader, is back into the race and just about keeping himself in the right place. Luke Davis, the AM driver, the number 72, is going to get out of the pit lane, and I think the number 72 is going to emerge in the lead of the race. Ryan Chandler's going to have something to say about that, though, as we see Tyler Graff coming into the pit lane, as we see the guys inside the top 15 coming out, just showing how much pace he had and how much time you lose in that pit stop.
Yeah, racing laps have been sort of about a minute 25 around here, and it kind of looks like a minute stroll down pit lane. So it is a long pit lane and a relatively short lap. How's that, your pulse from both categories?
Right, actually, Tyler Graff and Colin McKenzie coming in. And interesting that they've left it out the longest, isn't it, the 2 pole sitters? It's probably just a coincidence, but bit of a funny coincidence. This pit stop as well for Tyler Graff could be indicative, because he will come out somewhere near Brett Thurman, but Thurman already making his way towards turn 1. This is going to be tight. I think Thurman may have an edge here. Off pit road comes Tyler Graff, and through goes Thurman. And in the end, it's not even close, David.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. So did he have a bad in-lap? Did he need a much longer stop for some reason? It all seems relatively proportionate, for example, between McKenzie and Tyler Graff, their stops. So where does that 2.5-3 seconds come from?
Confusing, isn't it? But clearly it's come from somewhere, maybe a mistake from Tyler Graff, somewhere, maybe Brett Thurman. We did see him come out in some nice clean air when he exited the pit lane. Maybe he could just pound the lap times in. He was never in the lead in this race, so maybe he had that pace in his back pocket and was able to use it with a little bit of an undercut. But really interesting to see now that the 2 leaders have swapped around with so little time left on the clock. You'll have a look at the pit stop time, and again, there's really not much in it, but you have to say Brett Thurman's 9.8 that early in the pit cycle is A, impressive, and may B, come into question how much fuel has he got on board to get to the end.
Yeah, I think it just shows that there's not a whole lot of variation through how much fuel everyone's taken. So Brett Thurman has found that time somewhere other than just the box time. But Brett Thurman's lane time is shorter. So what's with that? Did Graf struggle to get out of the pit box with the tall first gear, or did he? Yeah, where else can it come from?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing. Maybe it really is just Brett Thurman's unlocked pace. Maybe there was just that little mistake from Tyler Graf that we didn't quite see. But in their best lap times, Brett Thurman and Tyler Graf, Brett Thurman is a 1 minute 25.008, and Tyler Graf is a 1 minute 25.045. I mean, there's not much to separate them at all. Maybe there was just that little bit of a moment that we didn't really quite catch from Tyler Graf with the lead that he had, not really getting noticeably smaller. But with all the pit stops now having taken place, we really do now have an exact picture of what we're expecting towards the end. And Jeff Kaufhold, after his slight struggles towards the start, back up into P4 and looking to kind of consolidate that championship lead as we head to Barcelona next week.
Yeah, so Ryan Chandler doesn't seem like he's been a big winner from all of those pit stops in the AM class. Mackenzie and Davis are together. How is the Corvette now late into the race? It's looking pretty good for Kyle Colbert.
It is, number 37 doing a good job on the back of the Ferrari. It's nice to see as well that we've got, what's that, 6 manufacturers inside the top 7. Only a repeat of the Porsche, which is really good to see that the variation between these machines, I mean, there's not a whole deal. I mean, drivers clearly, oh my word, there's a crash on that. That's Ryan Chandler going around. He was right in the fight in the AM category. Or is that him going around? Or is that him staying out? I think that's him staying down the front stretch. But there's someone in the background. I think, is it Colin McKinsey? Oh, the number 15 car, even worse for him. He was fighting right in the podium places. Now, he's not going to be anywhere to be seen on that timing tower.
Just gets a big drift through the final corner and through turn 14 without any contact, without any visible damage. He loops it, and that's a big one. He was running second, I think. Or was he even running first in class?
I think it was second, but even still, I mean, this is a big loss of points for someone coming into this race. Colin McKinsey, who's had a decent opening to the season, second in the championship. This is really quite damaging for his championship hopes, isn't it?
It's just disappointing in this race alone, before you even factor in any bigger picture stuff, to be having a good race, to have the pole in your class, and then just late on, it seems like the left sides are worked pretty hard, and there was still a little bit more room to open up the hands a little bit, use a little bit more of the road, rather than lean on that left rear tyre as hard as happened, and it snapped and caught him out big time.
Yeah, not good at all for him, and he will have to rebuild his championship charge in the next couple of races. Going to give a really big advantage to Luke Davis, who already has the lead in the championship coming into this round by 8 points. For someone like Buck Hamilton as well, P5 in the championship coming into this one, going to be seeing a really big boost coming out of the race if he can stay in P2. And for Ryan Chandler as well, someone struggling a little bit more down in P9, these points are going to be gold dust at this, in what is still the early stages of the season. Under 5 minutes to go to win this race. Time has really ticked away from us over the course of that pit window in the last couple of laps, and all of a sudden these moves are going to have to be made pretty quickly if you're Kyle Colbert, and he's going to go for it, down in towards turn 12. No, he was dummying to the inside, and on the angle we had, he dummied me as well there.
Yeah, certainly looked like it, but then as he cut across, he was not really close enough to try to do it. But you're thinking, I've got to now, and maybe that final corner becomes tough now for some of the Ferraris. You saw driver in front really running out wide onto the front straight. Kaufhold just having to use all of the road there, while the Corvette still looks pretty good through that part of the lap.
consistency's still high as well, isn't it, from these guys? Lap times are really quite good at the moment. For Jeff Cowfold, he'd like to be a little bit closer to Andrew Trickett than he currently is, to maybe give him a little bit of that slipstream down in towards turn 7. We will run our way down in towards this important left-hander. Carl Colbert again looking to the inside. Is he going to absolutely send it this time? Yes, he is. Late on the brakes, and the 37 is in the battle. They go side by side into the left-hander at turn 7. Turn 8 would favour Jeff Cowfold, and he will cover off the line in towards 9 and 10. But back up the inside, Carl Colbert looking for it. Can he look at the position? No, he can't, because he's facing the wrong way. There was definite contact between those two. How much we will have to see in a minute, but this is giving Eric Terry Haag another position, a driver who's just run his own race for the last half an hour or so, finding himself in P5, and that's how Carl Colbert found himself facing the wrong way. Just the slightest of taps.
An ambitious move to try to sell it there. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of contact, but he is getting a whole lot of the curb on the inside there as well. Here's the alternative angle to just send it in there. No, I don't think there's any contact, is there?
To say, even if there is, it's not really enough to pin that on Jeff Cowfold at least. So yeah, unfortunate little incident there for Kyle Colbert, but I think he'll be pleased at the fact that he's still in the top 6. So that spin costing him 10 seconds, only costing him the 1 spot. If he spun down where Luke Davis is, he'd be rest assured it would cost him a whole of a lot more in terms of his overall position. But we will continue on. Jeff Cowfold now should be able to get the car home for 4th and not be under too much pressure. Ryan Chandler, though, trying to put pressure on Buck Hamilton for P3 overall. This is the onboard from Kyle Colbert. We'll see it again. Very tight line. Well, I mean, yeah, there doesn't look like there's contact there, but there also might be a little bit of the coding there.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you see there was very, very little in it. Someone's hard in the wall up the back there.
It's David Bush, yeah. We saw him bouncing his way in, but that is not how you want to close out your race, and that's a hard hit as well. I'm surprised he can keep that car going, quite frankly.
Man, was he late turning into the left-hander and then had to turn tight, lost it, got the... no, it's contact.
Yeah, and not a big hit, but down at that corner, you don't need a big hit, do you? Let's see. Yeah, and I think from Lucas Nguyen there in the number 80, you may say that was maybe a little bit ambitious to try and stick a nose up the inside there. But yeah, that is what the argument will be for that one, I am sure. But we'll let that be settled post-race and see if anything gets changed around there. 1 minute on the clock left to run. You know, I think it's going to be quite tight, actually, whether we see Brett Thurman cross the line to win this race this lap, whether we're going to be going one more. Going to be very close indeed. And I'm talking within a second or two here, David.
Yeah. Is who's your Barney waving the white flag already? Because if he's not now, then he can't throw the checkered flag without throwing the white flag first. He always does things sequentially and properly. So I think you get one more after this, no matter what.
Yeah, let's see. Time is ticking down. I think he should get to the lap time, and our timing towers are indicating that this is lap 24 of 25, but they come around the final corner. It's still going to be quite close. That timer ticking down under 10 seconds. Let's see. I think he will get to the line in time as the timer sticks a little bit. 5, 4, 3. Is he going to get there? He gets there just in time with, I believe, 2 seconds on the clock. So Brett Thurman just giving us one more lap. But, I mean, that was close, wasn't it? There was a second there where it really did look like we might be seeing the final lap, and Barney may just have to get the white flag out as they run up to the line.
It actually wouldn't have made any difference though, because like I say, Barney will never throw the checkered flag without throwing the white flag first, because he hadn't thrown the white flag the lap previously. He could only throw the white flag that time and the checkered the next. The ending time of the race is actually determined sort of 2 laps before it ends. Yeah,
and that sequence of events has now occurred. It means that we are definitely on the final lap, and it means that Brett Thurman is definitely coming through the final half of his lap. There's Barney furiously waving the flag. Thanks to Hugo.
Every day's arm day when you're the flag man.
Yeah, there's no leg day for Barney. Every time he's not on the broadcast, he's in the gym. Probably a gym somewhere around the circuit for him to get himself ready for the harshness in terms of the waving of the flag. But he's going to be waving the checkered very shortly indeed, because Brett Thurman's coming to the line. But has Brett Thurman run out of fuel? I think he has, you know. And I talked about, and I didn't really think about my point actually sticking. I didn't think he'd underfuel the car, but it seems that he just about has. And Tyler Graf, all of a sudden, it looked like he was going to finish second. He's going to inherit the win, and it's the number 77 in dramatic circumstances at the end of the race who will see himself on the top step of the podium. Brett Thurman just begging the car to get to the line. Barney's getting ever closer, but not before Eric Terry Haag comes through. Kyle Colbert comes through. Park Hilliard as well. Can Thurman get there before Sully Sad? It's going to be close, but you've got the likes of Ryan Osborne and Luke Davis coming through, and credit to Luke Davis, he's your winner in the AM category, and he's edged out Buck Hamilton and Ryan Chandler. What a dramatic ending to that race, though.
He had 2 seconds in his pocket for ages, and he must have been very surprised that the race didn't go 1 lap shorter than it did, because I thought, okay, like, he needed to save a tiny bit of fuel at the end there, and he would have still been able to hold on to the lead, and he didn't. So he must have been very, very surprised by his own pace, let alone Tyler Graf's, who I think also didn't think he was going to win that race until about lap 12 of the final lap, turn 12 of the final lap.
Yeah, Tyler Graf was already in the mindset, I'm sure, in the last few corners of thinking, well, that's a P2, I'll take that. And all of a sudden, it becomes a P1. Eric Terry Haag, a driver who I don't actually think we've seen make an actual, an on-track move for position in the last half an hour, but he picked up, I think, 5 by little incidents going off in front of him, and he will benefit none more, though, than Tyler Graf winning in his McLaren for the Madworks team after 25 hard-fought laps here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Andrew Chickett was second and also set the fastest lap, with Jeff Calfold inheriting the podium. Eric Terry Haag, Kyle Colbert and Park Hilliard all finished ahead of the ailing Brett Thurman, who ran out of fuel in the final couple of corners. He was lucky to finish ahead of this train, started by Sully Sad, Ryan Osborne, and our AM winner Luke H. Davis, who extends his championship lead. Rolling on, it's Joshua Lewis and Buck Hamilton 11th and 12th, with that train being completed by Lou Christian, Ryan Chandler, Andrew Vernaro, Matt Scherf, and Nicholas Johnson. Thomas Rapp a couple of seconds off, and then the gap back to Pete Messier, the number 34 in P19, and Jake Vasconcelos, the dog, down inside the top 20 after starting well outside the top 40. So great job from him. Waldo Walden 21st with Ryan Luna in 22nd. It was Dale Pedersen, Robert Jeffries and Marshall Hurtado inside the top 25. Jeff Lubick, Colin McKinsey, Sean Mulholland, Clarence Rosa and David Morse inside the top 30. Colin McKinsey would hope for a little bit more before his crash. Jay Steffi was 31st ahead of Sam Smeltzer, David Bush and Carsten Quint. It was Lucas Nguyen, who we saw had a couple of incidents in that race, finished 35. Barry Cochran and Mark Bray, the other drivers on the lead lap. Jared Keenan, Kevin Bergquist were a lap down, and then you've got the drivers who really didn't get close to the checkered flag. Ian Cabana 8 laps down, Alex Wright 11, Dino Vella 13, and then drivers who barely got off the opening couple of laps. Ross Sortino, our pole sitter in the AM category, Felix Felice, Tony Costello and Reagan Chandler. Just seen that Tyler Graf is sitting waiting for an interview, so we'll drag him in now. Tyler, welcome into the broadcast booth. Congratulations on the win. I mean, I don't know how much you expected that into the final corner, but that must feel a little bit sweeter with the circumstances.
Oh man, I knew he was close. I knew he was close on fuel because I stretched it an extra lap and I ran out and entering the my pit box, and I don't know, I knew it was close. So I was pushing, but trying to give him a little bit of space at the same time. But yeah, that was just great racing. Brett's great just fantastic to race with. Always gives a lot of room, and just a good guy to know to race on racetracks. So shout out to him first. It's gutting to lose it in the last corner like that. So I feel for him.
I mean, congratulations on the win, particularly after the 2 4th places that you've had in the opening couple of rounds. So close yet so far in those, but getting onto the podium and the top step here. I really want to focus back on the start, though. Talk us through what the thinking process was, because you really went early and you seemed to catch everybody napping.
I figured I should just try to go where there's the least traction, and try to catch them out a little bit. So I went and it worked. I think also going early kind of strings everybody else out and makes turn 1 a little bit cleaner. So Was kind of hoping that would be the case. I don't know how it was behind me, but yeah, just a great race. Just a great race.
And does this give you the boost and the confidence that you're looking for going into the next round? I mean, you're riding a bit of a crest of a wave. Can you make up even more points in Barcelona next week?
I think so. There's a lot of tracks that I just don't know all that well, and in the first two tracks of the season, I just struggled at. And I was surprised that I struggled at Le Mans, is because I won there last season or 2 seasons ago. But I just growing pains with this new car, and I kind of told myself a week ago, if I don't get on pace this week, I'm switching back to the Porsche. And it figured it out this week. It helps that I have a ton of laps at this racetrack from all the IndyCar stuff that I've done. So I'm just pumped. I'm just pumped.
Yeah, and great to speak to you. Congratulations again, though, Tyler. Hope to speak to you next week, but congratulations on the win for now.
Thank you.
Tyler Graff there, our winner in the Pro category. We're also hopefully going to be able to be joined by Andrew Trickett, but I think he's in the wrong chat to drag him in. I'll let him know. But in the meantime, David, Jeff Calfold is here. P3 man, he's here with you right now.
Hello.
Yeah,
How you doing?
congratulations there.
Yeah, thank you. That was not exactly the race I was hoping for. That was a tough one. There was a lot of people in this league have stepped up their game since the first 2 races, so it's glad to know there's a lot of competition out there.
We see you with a little bit of a dent on the front left, quite a few other cars out there, and early on in the race, it seemed like a lot of drivers found it sort of low grip, trying to get traction out of some of the slow corners. Overall, a bit slippery.
Yes, it was very slippery. There was contact, I think, on lap 2 when someone lost control in front of me. And then by the end of the race, my tires were sliding at that exit turn on the long straight. So it was tough keeping it on track.
And then how'd you approach the fuel strategy? Because we saw up front a couple of different ways to go about it, and not all of them seemed like the correct solution. Yours worked out reasonably well enough for a good points haul here.
Yeah, thank you. So I was trying to save a little bit of fuel in the pit stop, and I didn't expect so many to pit early. So when I hit enough traffic, I finally pitted and was able to pass someone in the pit lane and kind of save a second. So that kind of worked out well for me after I was trying to make up ground from the opening.
Ferrari's a good-looking and relatively recent machine. So how's that decision going?
I've been enjoying the Ferrari on the previous 2 tracks. It is not very good here. It barely got a bop for the Indy 6 hours, so I was kind of happy with my P3 overall.
Well, congratulations and best of luck racing in the future.
Thank you.
Calfold there, our P3 man, and great to speak to him as well, especially after such another good performance in getting himself back in the groove, and should be leading the championship by a little bit more than 0 points coming into the next race at Barcelona. Shame that we won't be able to get to Andrew Trickett. I don't think he's been able to get into the right channel, but that means that we can say thank you very much for a race from the GT3 Fixed Series, and turn our attention to the GT3 Sprint Series, which is coming up. Another series where I think we're going to see a lot of variation, David, but with the ability to change a little bit on the setups, we might see those lap times a little bit faster than we saw in that fixed race.
And certainly what you're seeing with the curbs, the temperature, the weather conditions on the racetrack, and then some parts of the road course are pretty slippery. Anything that can just give you comfort and consistency is speed in and of itself.
We will get onto that after we say goodbye for the Fixed Series. It's been a great race, great points on the board for Tyler Graff. We'll see if he can pick that up as we get to next week at Barcelona, and if Luke Davis can continue that march at the top. But we'll see you back in a minute for the Sprint Series. then to Indianapolis. It's time for the GT3 Sprint Series. We say thank you to the Fixed Series, and it gives us, and it really sets us up well for what should hopefully be an absolute thriller in the Sprint Series. We come into round 3 here with an interesting championship battle, particularly in the Pro Championship. A couple of newer drivers to the league really mixing it well up there. Of course, we've got Elliot Budzinski, who is at the top of the standings, and I'm sure we'll be able to take a quick look at those now. There we go. He leads the championship after the first couple of races by 6 points, a little bit more comfortable in the Sprint Series and the Fixed Series in the Pros. Luke Wallace is in second with Jaden Conwright not too far back. Then it gets tight. Cade Middleton, Emmett Lindqvist and David Holland with Simon Theroux inside the top 7. J.R. Williams, Vincent Trepanier and Connor Wagner, the top 10 drivers in that Pro category. Over in the AMS though, it's Steve Baker who leads the way by 5 points ahead of Rich Calais, nice and tight before we get back to Corey Saccone in P3. Ryan Reeves and Peter Moller both over 50 points and both inside the top 5, with Chris Stewart, Matthew Brower, Bryce Bombeck, Kyle Robertson and Eric Fox just about keeping themselves inside the top 10 of the AM standings. Over in the teams, it's Phil Dinez Racing led by Elliot Budzinski at the moment, leading the way with 204 points. SRTE Yellow are in second but tied with Advanced Motorsports on 176. It's Solprec Precision Racing Gold and SCR2 who are 4th and 5th, with SRTEX Unit Sim Sports, SCR1, Solprec Precision Racing Blue, Upfront Motorsports and Championship Racing Collective rounding out your top 10 in the team's standings. And with those all run through, we can start to tell you about the story in qualifying. We're coming right to the end of the session. Very little time left on the clock, and we've got Vincent Trepanier currently at the top of the timesheets here, David.
Yes, we do. From Therio, from Mendoka, from Wallace, and from Conwright. And just saw a little bit of mowing happening out there. But what we have here is a bit more sun out on the racetrack. Hopefully you're just looking for consistency from the conditions, whether it's a little bit slippery or the track's fully gripped up. You just want it to feel that way all the way from qualifying through the race.
Yeah, and good laps currently on the board for a couple of these drivers. We are looking at number 55, David Mendonca at the moment. He's currently sitting in P3 in qualifying, a couple of tenths off, in fact a quarter of a second, pretty much exactly off of our provisional pole time, looking to try and put it up there with the other guys. Of course, David Mendonca looking to get some good points on the board, not had the easiest opening couple of races, down in P24 in the championship, and wouldn't mind a good run at it here, but he won't be sitting another lap time. He's coming into the pit lane as the checkered flag flies. But again, we are seeing these close lap times here, aren't we?
Yep, mighty competitive at the moment. Same happened in the racing, so you don't want to get tangled in traffic in qualifying, but if you can get a little bit of a tow off a teammate, it could make a world of difference. Again, I stand by my, you want to start in the top 6. That's my wisdom from today. You don't want to enter pit lane like that.
No, and I don't know what really is going on down there. I mean, the time is at 0 at this point if you've messed up your lap. That's the session done, so you might as well come in. Theroux's coming in, or Therio I should say. Trepanier is in as well. Mendonca, Wallace and Conwright the top 5 at the time being. But again, Conwright to Lindqvist, 5th and 6th. 1,000th of a second. We saw the second row in the Pros in the Fixed Series split by 1,000th. We're looking like we're going to get the third row unless anything will change right at the end of the session. But I think we're going to get away with it indeed. Nothing moving inside the top 10, and Peter Nodwell will be in P13. Times are tight again at the moment, but we're hopefully going to be able to get a bit of a look to see how the pole laps unfold, because with the Sprint Series here, David, we often get a little bit more in terms of what drivers can do with their setups, and you can really see that reflected in the lap times and in the onboards, really.
Yeah, so maybe the gearing, something to think about for a few others. And I think Nodwell's last lap on track there was actually quicker, but not allowed for some reason, presumably track limits. So again, something that was a consideration for the drivers.
This could be, we saw this last week actually at Le Mans. There was a couple of times that came in that didn't pop up in the timing tower, but ended up being reflected in the grid. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. But this is the pole lap then from the number 89, Simon Therio, as he runs his way through the opening couple of corners. And you were talking about this, weren't you, about how getting the tow could be helpful? I mean, he's getting it right now, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely perfect here, particularly if it's someone with a similar pace to you where they're towing you, but you're not going to catch up to them too quickly that it gets in your way towards the end, and then I like to keep a look at the Porsche gearing here, how it goes for him, and I think that's definitely shorter, a little bit shorter than what we saw from some of the others, or maybe he's got a bit less wing in it and it just keeps pulling down the straights a little bit better. Whatever the case, certainly the gearing looks a little better adapted to how Therio has the car set up, really letting him keep and flow momentum through the 4 apexes that make up that part of the lap. And then you're only looking at one more real big braking zone. So on a little bit of an angle on the banking here, we're seeing consistently the Porsches want to just kiss the curb but not launch across it, whereas a few other cars that go supercar style and launch across the curbing, that's not the Porsche. It's strong in other places, like getting to full throttle quickly.
And the Bathurst special event was last week. You won't want to be carrying up your supercar habits, but Simon Therio doing a very good job and using the toe to great effect to put himself on pole in the pro category. And full credit to him for doing so. Therio coming into this race off the back of a couple of decent results. 1 top 5. He did take a pole earlier on this season, so he has got a little bit of pace in the back pocket. But 2 poles out of 3 is good. You want to kind of deliver on that and kind of increase his place from P7 in the championship. We're going to be getting going in the not too distant future. Conditions, they look pretty much perfect, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. Partly cloudy, but not mostly cloudy. So only sprinklings of cloud coming across. Not too much deviation. Track temperature to air temperature, and certainly manageable there. Not too much wind either. It's a good thing.
Yeah, only a breath of wind in the air today. Nice, beautiful conditions. If you were sitting in the stands, you'd be loving it, quite frankly. 74 ambient, 88 on the track. Again, not scintillatingly hot on the track. I don't think the tyres are going to be taking too much of a beating, but the drivers are going to be able to get a little bit more accustomed to maybe those higher fuel levels in this short warm-up session before they can focus in for the race. I mean, how important do you think this start's going to be? Is it going to be crucial, I think, do you think, to get away at the start? Of course, we saw how in the Fixed Series how the top 2 were able to pull away. Do you think that's necessarily crucial? Or, as you've mentioned, being in the top 6, do you think even if you can stay close in the opening couple of stages, you've still got a bit of a chance?
You just don't want to get a slowdown penalty on the opening lap. You don't want to be off the road at turn 1 or 5 and 6. So you wouldn't catch me holding my ground on lap 1 on the way into that chicane. I'd be just looking to stay clean and get a good run through there, even if it cost me, 1 or 2 spots on the opening lap.
Getting through that opening lap can be so difficult, especially with the amount of cars we have in the field. And I can tell you, I can't tell you the exact number, but it's pretty close to what we had in the Fixed Series. It can be so tricky, especially in the mid-pack, isn't it? When you've got so much congestion on the circuit to try and pick your way through. Starting at the back may be a little bit easier because you'll be able to have a little bit of foresight in what happens. But I think starting in the mid-pack is going to be tricky, but for some of these guys that maybe didn't have the qualifying they necessarily needed, they're going to have to get pushy on the start, and that's where we might see some of those incidents occur.
Yeah, and we don't know the kind of character of the race start that we're going to get this time. Is it going to be a little bit more compressed? Is it going to be sort of open again? And even when it was open, I think what that did was just delayed some of the fireworks to laps 2 and 3 when we started to see more cars going side by side through turns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that part of the lap, and then even some dive bombs that you might have seen on lap 1 in ordinary circumstances that sort of had to wait till laps 2 or 3 into turn 7 at the end of the back straight.
Yeah, but we'll have to work out how it all unfolds. We'll see how it unfolds in a minute or two. And Simon Therio is going to lead us to green ahead of his teammate, Vincent Trapanier. It'll be David Mendonca in third ahead of Luke Wallace in fourth, with Jaden Conwright and Henrik Lindqvist setting up a very tight third row of the grid. We roll on for Elliot Budzinski and David Holland. Elliot Budzinski, championship leader, starting in seventh, and with Steve Baker, leader in the championship in AM and leader in terms of on the grid in P9. Eric Palacio is 10th. Kevin Simpson and Sean Dickinson on row 6. 6, as all of these guys still within half a second, and that theme really nearly continues with Peter Nodwell, J.R. Williams, and Ryan Scalny inside the top 15. Nick Ledecky, Kate Middleton, and Connor Wagner inside the top 18, with Evan Mackay and Chris Long inside the top 20. Ryan Reeves, Wesley Bryce, Devin Brock, and Miles Brown inside the top 24. With more drivers filling the grids. Rows 13, 14 and 15 are filled with Noah Anderson, Ethan Bass, Chase Wilson, Andrew Chorostecki, Corey Saccone and Brian Krause. And those drivers all within a second of the leader. As to Dakota Knapp and Peter Moller just about sneaking in there, with Chris Stewart just about over a second off of that pole time. Joshua Spears, Stephen Dunn and Rich Calais are on rows 17 and 18 as we roll on to Adam Henwood, Carl Robertson, Calvin Mines and Richard Savetra the top 40. It'll be Jeremy Nettleton and Paula Spina in 41st and in 42nd, with Jack Polyak rounding out the field 43rd. And that means in total tonight, David, we're going to have had 89 drivers through the doors. It's always so good to see the attendance so high for these events.
Yeah, no dogs in this one, which is a shame for me, but you know, you can't always have things your own way. Yeah, how close to needing an Indianapolis bump day with grids that size? That's a tradition that thankfully not needed for GT3s on the road course.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of these guys, surviving this opening lap with all of the drivers around them is going to be critical, but at least they don't have to worry about any kind of, unidentified person driving some of these cars. They can just focus on their own start and try and get away nicely. We'll see as well if Simon Theriault was maybe watching what happened in the Fixed Series and the start that we saw there, if he may try and go early or whether he might delay. If he does delay, it's going to be interesting just to see the difference in terms of going early and going slightly later, and the difference that can make. Because if we go slightly later, I think it's almost certain that we're going to see a big concertina effect down into turn 1, and a lot of what you expected into the opening race of cars going wide into turn 2.
I think the key difference here, though, is teammates on the front row. So you can have a strategy that you've communicated there. And you think about not just what's advantageous for the pole sitter, but what's advantageous for the teammates. Because obviously they work together in qualifying. Surely they've got a plan to work together in the race as well.
And we'll see if Trepanier, who may be talking right there to his teammate, Simon Theriault, if they have any kind of plan that they are brewing up together as we get towards the final stages of this qualifying lap. Nice dark room there for Simon. Evan Mackay, he's been on our screens the last couple of weeks. He's still got that door open, and I just could not cope. But his broom, as bright as anything, it just does show the antipathy between the drivers. Every driver likes their own thing, don't they, David?
Yeah. You've got to have all of your little personal preferences, your little comforts, and that goes down to how you set up your rig, how you set up your room, how you set up your setup.
Yeah, thankfully, for Evan Mackay, we couldn't quite see his bed, but of course, all that what looked like a dead body. I think it was because someone having a lie down, but thankfully, no concerns there. He'll be focusing on the race, as we will be, as we come into the final couple of corners. The front two, they may have talked to each other, they may have planned this in advance. It's Simon Theriault and Vincent Trepanier who will lead us to green in the third round of the season. We've got a couple of hungry fighters in Mendonca and Wallace in behind. When do we go green? It's going to be later than the Fixed Series, that's for sure already. But we are going now as we go through the final corner. Another early start to the race and a great launch off the line for Simon Theriault. He is going to easily control this field down towards the opening corner and dish out the toe to his teammate Trepanier to try and defend from Mendonca. Inside line for Trepanier against Mendonca. That bright yellow Corvette on the outside will try and dance it around the outside. But for the two teammates at the front, they've got through the opening corners safely, and that'll be part 1 of the plan completed.
Was a good start for Theriault, but one that put Trepanier under perhaps a little bit more pressure than if they'd waited a little bit longer. But we get this opening lap action. Ooh, and we sure do.
Yeah, Peter Notwell there going around. That is not the start he would have wanted, the number 73. And there's more shenanigans going on through 6 and 7. I'm surprised, or 5 and 6 I should say, as there's drivers well off of the circuit, but still on the tarmac. 4 wide is that in towards turn 7. You don't want to be doing that into this heavy braking zone. Very easily controlled to the inside. Is that David Holland in the middle of it? Very well could be in that white, blue and red car as they run their way through this middle sector for the opening time. Evan Mackay is in the thick of this as well as they get through turn 8. A couple of incidents that we saw throughout the fixed race down there, but none such occurrence throughout the opening lap here in the Sprint Series. Really heavy fighting in this midfield. Drivers clearly wanting to get a move on, but at the front, Therio and Trepanier getting away nicely, but Mendonca is by no means letting them get away.
Most of the damage we've seen so far has been on Corvettes for whatever reason. Perhaps just poor luck in that case. But now that they're up to racing speed, Therio is able to engage Trepanier back into this, and the two of them get about half of a second over third place.
Mendonca just sticking there for the time being. They've got that little bit of a comfort gap, and Trepanier will be able to defend, you'd think, on his teammate, but you know, it may be tricky as we work our way through the next few laps just to see if those two can pull away from the rest. That is what happened on the opening lap, and it wasn't a very pretty sight, losing the rear end up in front. Yeah, I mean, what can you do in that scenario if you're Chris Stewart? You see a car going sideways, you tried to avoid, but it's to a point where there's just nowhere you can go.
He must have got shoveled in at speed from someone behind, right? Because he had... Yeah. Because he saw it and tried to slow down, and he knew that the left-hand side of the road was going to get closed up and that you have to go to the right of the incident to get through, but then he just couldn't.
Getting collected there, and not the start of the race that he would have wanted after a qualifying position, which put him into a group where the pace between them was very, very tight. Could have been a really interesting little gaggle of cars, but for the time being, they have been separated. We'll see how well those guys can recover. But for the likes of Chris Stewart, Corey Saccone, they are still in pit lane. But I think they're the only two major casualties of the opening lap, which is good to see. 2 laps completed, though, here in Indianapolis. Trepanier looking nicely calm and collected. Not much of a flicker of emotion down in towards turn 1 and turn 2, but for the time being, the 89 and the 87 working nicely together as teammates.
Yeah, it's Porsche's 1, 2, 3 at the moment for this, so we'll see if they are the car to have in the long run, or if they just they qualify, they fire up pretty well. It was I think Ferraris and McLarens that actually looked the tough car to have in the longer runs earlier.
Yeah, it did. It's going to be interesting just to see how the differences are made here. It's a little bit more Porsche Corvette heavy in the Sprint Series. We don't get as much variation as we do in the Fixed, but I think that also comes down to what you could do with some of these cars just to maybe improve a couple of the bits which make a couple of these cars particularly good, like the Porsche, like the Corvette. But we're going to run in towards turn 7 once again. Dakota Knapp is the driver that we are following through this middle sector. Already we're seeing this kind of stringing out of the mid-pack, drivers not really able to make too many moves early on, and it's interesting to see that it has settled down a touch towards the back end of the field. Close to the top end, the teams, it still looks quite hard fought at the moment, doesn't it?
You've got less groups and more one long, mostly unbroken train through the field as they're overall a little bit closer.
And it's going to be interesting just to see if they can keep it nice and tight as we work our way towards the pit stops. 40-minute race, slightly more extended here in the sprint rather than the fixed, so a little bit more wiggle room in terms of the strategy, a little bit more wiggle room in terms of where you can go through 5 and 6. Kate Middleton looking for a move, not finding a line through there, and after looking for the move, going to come under pressure immediately from Ryan Scalny as they make their way towards turn 7. Conor Wagner just trying to defend the position as they get in towards this tight left hand. There's a driver getting a little bit deep on the brakes as well, all going off into this tight braking zone, important braking zone for overtaking, but just about, I think we're going to see the holding off of the move there as they work their way through the middle sector for Cade Middleton, who will hang on to P16 and will give a little bit of flashing lights. Maybe not too happy with the line that was taken from Conor Wagner, but I don't know what Conor Wagner could have done after that little moment that he had out of turn 4.
one McLaren with the endurance lights, one without. Just one of those little quirks of how you can set up your car. Do you need all of the extra lights in these conditions? No. But if you were just picking a baseline from a setup that you knew would be good for a track like this, and that one had them, maybe you just left them on. This is what I talk about, this sort of nearly unbroken string of cars. It's just non-stop down the front straight.
See them ducking and diving out of the line. Here's Evan Mackay as he runs his way through the opening couple of corners, and you can just see that, I mean, you need to be that much closer to make the moves. A few tenths back is just not close enough, but when you're in trains like this, it's so tricky just to gain that extra tenth and a half to get yourself into the picture. Good exit though from the number 91 out of turn 4. He'll bounce over 5 and 6 and maybe have a bit of a look into turn 7, but a little bit too far back, he'd say, for the time being. But at this stage of the race where you just need to settle in, isn't it? You can try and look for moves, but this is where the rhythm can really help you. And if you can get into the rhythm now, it's going to benefit you all the way towards the end of the race.
Don't toast your tyres. You've seen a few of these cars getting wiggly as they get to power here and other places. So don't make it worse in the long run. I think you're seeing a tiny bit of fuel saving here, but also just trying to keep some of the good of the tyres for later on when you're going to need it as well.
And of course it may have some impact of what we have at the end. Of course, drivers are going to have to be thinking about the fuel, maybe a little bit safer. I don't think we're going to be running it quite as close as we were in the fixed series, but you never do know. We've got 29 laps currently listed as what we expect on our timing tower, but that could change depending on how these cars run. But if you're thinking with an extra 5 minutes, a lap time at about 1 minute 25, 1 minute 24, perhaps going to take you a little over 4 minutes, so I don't think we're going to run it too close, and I think drivers will know exactly what to put in the car in terms of fuel, but especially as we've seen it in race 1, going to have to be something we think about and the drivers have to think about, because they clearly can't run it too tight on the fuel, because it could come back to hurt them a little bit.
It does seem like it'd be foolish to plan on the race going any shorter than 29 at the moment. If you're thinking, oh, maybe, you know, I can go a little finer than that, expecting it to be a bit shorter, I think you're just putting yourself in a really, really dangerous position, especially when it's all this close.
Yeah, and at the moment, it is really going to impact on maybe a little bit of the aero wash for the cars, but they're not really feeling a lot of it. We saw it in qualifying, how drivers were able to stick very close to the cars in front. The dirty air from the car that they were following wasn't enough of a damaging effect on their lap time to make them want a little bit more room. So clearly not too much of a concern for these drivers, but may lose them just a little bit of time, even if it's at half a tenth, a tenth in the middle sector. Could be crucial if they're trying to line up a move into the tricky turn 12. Down in towards turn 1 we go though. Once again, a move possibly being made into the top 10. That's the number 2 of Steve Baker, looking to defend the place. He's leader in the AM category. It's Sean Dickinson going for the move. As they make their way through turns 1 and 2, it's Dickinson who's going to have the inside line for 3 and 4, and he should control that line. Steve Baker will lose the place, but shouldn't lose out too much. He still leads in the AM category.
Big Mustang will get its way in the end, even if it was pretty close through the opening sector of the lap there. Turns 1 through to 5, and then 6. Breaking into 7. Here's a move.
And they're getting... Yeah, that is getting very, very late on the brakes. That's Nick Ledecky trying to make the move in the BMW in that big Beamer through the middle sector. He's going to have to go around the outside here at turn 10. JR Williams, that was never going to work through there. Luckily, able to back out in time before a little bit of disaster, a flashing of the lights. But I could see Nick Ledecky going up the inside from a mile away, and I think he saw it a little bit too late. Another late braking maneuver. I don't think that was an attempted overtake, but that is still late on the brakes from Connor Wagner, who is gaining the position at the moment as they make their way through the final couple of corners. Cade Middleton getting involved in the act. This is a battle we've seen all race long, redeveloping now as they're battling up in front.
There was about to be a little bit of an irony there. You know, the car in front checking up to go an over-under, nearly getting hit from behind, and then that driver nearly did the over-under as well and nearly got hit from behind. So too much action to JR Williams as he nearly did what he was angry about others doing 2 corners later.
Yeah, but clearly some heavy fighting going on in drivers, maybe not so pleased with some others, and that may lead to some quite harsh battling upcoming, but we'll have to wait and see as they will come together again. A few drivers washing out wide as they've went their way through 5 and 6, but keeping it all nice and clean in terms of keeping it in a straight line, which is the number one priority for these guys. A little bit of a late braking manoeuvre going in towards turn 7 there, and it looked like it was Cade Middleton on the back of JR Williams again. JR Williams surviving it this time, but checking up a little bit in the middle of turn 7, not affecting anybody too heavily, and they will run the line of stern once again up to turn 12. This train, though, it is so close. Between Nick Ledecky in P12 and Chase Wilson in P27, there is not more than a second between those cars, just to put into perspective how long this train is.
Yeah, 2 fast straights and then challenging to pass in some of the other places. In a way, I'm reminded of Road America, which has 3 fast straights, but there's more overtaking opportunity around there.
Yeah, down in towards turn 1 and 2 again, though. Ryan Scanley looking for the move. He's not going to be able to get it down there, but sticking right up behind the rear end of Cade Middleton for the time being. Evan Mackay right in behind, and Chris Long, P2 man in the AM category, running in P19, 8 positions down on the AM leader at the moment, Steve Baker, and maybe looking to consolidate the position that he's currently in, bouncing his way over 5 and 6. We are seeing some, some strikingly different lines through that chicane, but it's clearly not looking too easy for the drivers to go through there, because they're not really going through the same each lap themselves, are they?
It's an awkward distance from turn 4, where if you really want to open up the full width of the track to take your line through 5 and 6, you have to be a bit narrow on the exit of turn 4 and carry less speed through there, which you don't want to do. So you're stuck in this sort of, do I go maximum speed through 4 and put myself on a line that is narrow on the way into the 5 and 6 chicane, or do I compromise earlier and hope that it means I'm going to get a good run through this chicane onto the next straight?
It's such an important straight that is, that is such an important thing to think about all the way through the race, and one of the corners that you've absolutely got to nail at this circuit, as you do with the penultimate corner, as you really kind of run flat out as much as you dare through the final. Down into towards turn 1 once again, though. We're getting towards that half distance mark. Pit stops are going to start to be coming into the drivers' minds. We might see a little bit more condensed pit stop window than we saw in the Fixed series, of course, with it being an ever so slightly longer race. We saw a couple of undercuts do well in the opening race tonight. Do you think the same can happen in this particular race with the Sprint Series still with a very tightly bunched field? Do you think we're going to see quite a monotone strategy?
I think the thing you don't want to do, though, is, again, just following directly behind another car into the pit lane, because some cars will really aggressively attack the start of the pit lane speed limit and others won't. And if you're one that will, you don't want to be behind one that won't. So I'd be tempted to run a bit longer, but just make sure that you don't follow in a car in front.
Yeah, and it can be tricky. We have seen a couple of instances this season where, the pit lane has just been absolutely chock-a-block with these GT3s. We might see it again, but we might see a couple of drivers try and do it a little differently. This is Adam Henwood in the 777. Ooh, getting T-boned through the penultimate corner. Actually getting a bit of a helping hand. If it hasn't damaged him too badly, he might say thank you for that, a little bit of help, because it's got him righted out properly, but still not the kind of spin you want to be seeing. Still, we're kind of waiting for the action to really explode into life, aren't we? We're seeing these trains form, but people waiting around, just thinking that, we've still got 25 minutes left. But we are in a position where we're going to see some very intense racing towards the end, aren't we?
Yeah, and here's another McLaren with the endurance lights fitted of Brian Krause, and he gets a nasty little ride across that curb. Doesn't seem to be riding it as well as Tyler Graf did, where his McLaren would just eat up and eat up and eat up the curbs.
Yeah, as we will see them run in towards turn 7. I mean, you've got to be careful on these curves. Turn 7 and 8, or 8 and 9 are very nice on the tyres, aren't they? How difficult is it on the tyres when you run over some of these curves to really keep them into temperature? Is it more difficult when you bounce your way over them like Brian Krause did there? I mean, what are the drivers going to be thinking about in terms of that tyre management right now?
I mean, if by bouncing you slide, then you're putting temperature in. So it's about how you land, and if you've got a lot of steering wheel in and you bounce across one of the curbs, then when you land, those tires are going to skid. That's something you want to avoid. But if taking a lot of curb lets you take a really straight, low steering input line through there, then it's better on your tires.
And looking good for a couple of these drivers who were, keeping it off the curbs and keeping it nice and concise with their lines, getting tight between Anderson and Kraus down into turn 1, but they keep it all nice and clean as they work their way through the opening couple of corners. This battle right in the middle of the field. 43 cars started this race, and we're looking at P21, 22 and 23 around there for the time being. So this is right in the thick of the action. People we haven't really mentioned for a long time, actually, up the front, Therio, Trapani and Mendonca, they've just been running their own race. They haven't gapped out much. They've stayed pretty much exactly where they are, but they are just still, Mendonca particularly, is still in that striking range, especially if he tries to do something on the strategy to try and put the cat amongst the pigeons with the top two.
I wonder if he's not actually being shaken by your leading duo, though, just a little bit, because it's 0.9 of a second to the car in front, only 1.1 clear of Luke Wallace behind. If you lose the toe of the cars in front, the car behind is going to get you very quickly. So you do need to not make any mistakes, but make sure you can match that pace of the leading two, because you're better to be, third in the top 3 than you are to have a lot of cars behind putting pressure on you.
And when there is a lot of pressure being applied to quite a lot of these drivers, they're having to adapt to it and adapting to it well for the time being. And I think a lot of these guys are going to be hoping that they are more front foot based in the second half of this race than watching on the mirrors and just trying to conserve a little bit of their tyres, a little bit more of the field to maybe extend by a lap or two in terms of the strategy. Kyle Robertson isn't hanging around though. P32, not going to become P31 just yet. He went out of the slipstream, dived back in at the last minute because he realised that the run that the car in front had, of course, that is Rich Calais in front of him, was just too much for him to make any kind of move. Big slide through turn 4. That's really going to hinder his run through 5 and 6, and now he's going to have to be looking a little bit in the rear mirror. I think he's a little bit too safe to be worrying about that, but even still, not the kind of little mistake you want to be making in this kind of race.
And then to one of the big boy Mustangs, you think of that as a car that should be able to take a little bit of curb. It's 2 distinct different types of curb around here though, isn't there? There's those tall ones on the inside of the apex of 1, 7 and 12. And then there's the really low, flat, rumbly ones that are also difficult on traction, but they're not going to send you quite as airborne.
No, it is interesting, the difference in the curbs here. A lot of tracks will have pretty much the same kind of curbs most of the way around. I'm thinking Watkins Glen have generally the same curbs most of the way around the circuit. Here you do get that drastic difference between turn 7 and then turns 8, 9 and 10, where they go from being almost a mountain to just flat and just basically a bit of painted tarmac. So it is interesting to see the differences, and drivers having to adapt with them corner by corner and doing it quite well. We are seeing drivers take different lines though, particularly over the heavier curbs. Some drivers attacking it more than others, thinking that they can gain a little bit more time by shortening off the corner. Some other drivers not risking it, thinking they may lose a little bit too much apex speed doing that. But interesting to see the kind of differences between the drivers' attitudes on that. Right, now approaching half distance in this race, we may be approaching some pit stops as well. Field spread is not big, so if we start to see some drivers come in, we may see an absolute flood of drivers pile their way onto pit road. Doesn't look like there's a big movement towards that this time round, and every single driver, at least in the top 30, definitely going to have a longer first stint than a second stint, it seems.
Yeah, I think you've only had 3 sort of scheduled stops: Ethan Bass, Richard Saavedra, and Joshua Spears. Everyone else is just running this out and not looking to be the first to blink.
And drivers just trying to, work out when to pit, work out when is going to be best for them and their race in terms of the drivers that they're fighting with as well. But it's going to be interesting just to see when everybody works their way onto pit road. Tight battle at the back end of the top 10 and into the teens then, and that we've kind of followed all the way through the race as we bounce over turns 5 and turn 6. A little bit of liberty being taken there by a couple of the cars, a couple of the guys going a little bit safer, but they'll work their way into turn 7. And once again, no one's really close enough to make any moves. I just have a gut feeling that after the pit stops, David, I'm almost hoping for it to happen, that we're going to see these drivers have a little bit more impetus behind them to make these moves stick.
Yeah, and you're starting to see temperature build up in the tyres and it get a little more tough because everyone's current pace is almost a second away from their best pace of the race. So maybe you take that pit stop, you cool the tyres a little bit, and you have a chance to then more confidently go and attack again, whereas right now you're just hoping to not make a mistake or lose positions before that pit window.
And a pit window which should surely be coming up soon. I mean, we're now really passing the halfway distance. No one has decided to come into pit road just yet. You can see that the position changes on your screen there, and there's really not much going on the top 10. I mean, the starts saw a couple of little moves. As we run through, I think you can hear me once again. Apologies for that. I think my internet connection went for a second there. That's what you get living next to a forest. Apologies for that. I was just mentioning how the positions have changed around in the top 10 by saying that they haven't really, have they? Yeah, exactly. But I was talking about Elliot Budzinski, championship leader, currently 6th at the moment. You said about being in the top 6. Do you think that this is a little bit too late to still be happy to be in the top 6, or do you still think he has a chance to at least get onto the podium from here?
Maybe a badger dug through your internet. We'll see what happens with these pit stops because you're starting to get a couple now, and we had variation in the previous race along not just how much fuel they took but how much their pit lane time took. So I think it's a few of these cars where GT3 cars don't do standing race starts, but they've got a standing launch out of their pit box, and a few of them have a very tall first gear that maybe that bogs down a little bit. So if you don't have a strategy using the clutch or something else, you lose a bit of time going into and out of the pit box if you're not careful. So there's optimizations to be had there that could do a lot for the character of the race after the stops.
Yeah, and we are still waiting for those stops, aren't we? The drivers are leaving it on the long finger to come into the pit lane. No one really making a call just yet. Are they going to come in this lap? Do we know? That's a move being made. Drivers being squeezed. They're off the road. There's contact. This is disaster if they can't get it stopped. They do get it stopped. I don't quite know how they've done that. Kate Middleton, Ryle Scanley involved as well, I should say. But the squeeze to the outside there, it was extreme. Off the circuit goes the number 32. That's JR Williams. It was a 13, I apologise, but JR Williams, he's been in the walls a bit, flashed the lights earlier, and I don't think he'll be too happy to be finding himself where he is now.
Normally there's rules about what part of the concrete beyond the asphalt that you can use, and so a little bit after the chicane is fine, but normally it's considered not part of the racing surface on the way down to that turn 7. It's one of your highest cars to have pitted in Luke Wallace.
One of the higher runners in the field to come into the box. I think he was running in P4. Yeah, it would make sense with the positions gained, wouldn't it? After what we saw not long ago. Conor Wagner getting himself into the top 10. Of course, a couple of pitters, but still doing a very good job at 8 spots. That's more likely to be, 7 or 6, but still a very good job going on in that number 51 car. Championship leader, though, Elliot Budzinski in P5. Looking to try and get after Jaden Conwright, and who's to say he can't? Of course, Conwright and Budzinski teammates, but after the early couple of rounds, Budzinski with the advantage, but only 10 points between himself and his teammate Jaden Conwright. You wouldn't think there'd be team orders this early on, would you?
If there was, I wouldn't listen to them.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be many drivers who'd be pleased, especially if you were in Jaden Conrad's position, a driver who definitely was looking for a win last week at Le Mans, didn't quite get it. Brzezinski ended up getting a slightly better position, if memory serves, and indeed that's right with the win.
Can't go to the left there.
Good news for him. Yeah, no,
that's not.
I think that's what we were saying.
That's not right.
Oh, yeah. And you can see the bounce there, the bounce of the car on the tarmac. There's clearly a couple more bumps on the outside where the drivers aren't really supposed to run, and it's cost J.R. Williams. I think he's out of the race, or at least back to pit road now.
It broke part of the suspension there, I think.
Yeah.
He's made the call, I'm going to defend the inside. Now the driver's gone, well, it's the same as, how about if I try to, pass you on the grass and then door bang you from the grass coming back onto the road? There was not a space to make the decision to go that side of the racetrack to try and pass.
Yeah, but a big old squeeze, wasn't it, as well? Really one of the biggest squeezes I've seen in quite a while, really defending that inside line. Back up to the front, you are seeing Simon Theriault in the lead. The driver in front, a lapped car. I believe that is Stephen Dunn, the number 72, who I think it's fair to say, not quite playing ball in the way that our pole sitter maybe would want him to, but will vacate. I was going to say vacate the lead of the race. He isn't in the lead of the race, but vacate the circuit for Theriault to drive into. Still waiting for drivers as they go around the circuit. No one really taking a pit stop just yet. Trepanier getting a little bit caught up behind the lapped car. Could this invite Mendonca onto the rear end? He's got much closer than he was just a couple of laps ago, and you can see there Theriault helping out his teammate with the slipstream. Yeah,
it looks in the mirror and sort of comes across to invite his teammate to pick up a little bit more of the slipstream. It's also interesting what it does for Mendonca, who'll be one of the next to try to get through.
We do see lots of drivers starting to make their way down pit road. Evan Mackay, he can have a little bit of a break. I'm sure he won't close his door behind him, but I would if I was him. But he will come onto his marks. He will have 10 seconds or so before he leaves his pit box, and he will get back out onto the racetrack. Those pit stops, though, do suggest that we may be heading towards a pit stop cycle at the front of the field. I mean, we've not got long for it to happen, so it has to happen in the next few laps. We'll have gone, 20 of the 29 laps on the opening stint, with only 9 to go. Mega opening stint. Clearly drivers not too worried about fuel consumption in this race.
And when you saw that little bit of traffic for the leaders, you think actually not a bad idea from Luke Wallace to pit when he did. Would have had a clean run at pit entry, clean run at pit exit, and there's a chance that half a second or a tiny bit more was lost from the others. So I think it wasn't a bad call. We'll see in a couple laps time, if it keeps him still in fourth, has him closer to these leaders, or if it's cost him and maybe he found some traffic having stopped earlier.
It's not going to be a lights to flag victory for Simon Theriault. He's coming to the pit lane, whereas Mendonca, Conrad and Holland have gone through. So the two teammates, they'll get onto their marks. They should get out P1 and P2 without too much of a hitch, but we are seeing quite a few drivers on pit road. Brzezinski joins them, Palacio, Middleton, Scalny, Brown, Brock, and they're just inside the top 14 at the moment. So clearly a hive of activity now. These two teammates getting right to the end of the pit lane must have felt like an absolute age for them to get to their marks. Well, they could stop and get the fuel added into the car. Not long on the stop. Both drivers back down and they will get released, but a slower exit from the pit lane for Simon Theriault. Trepanier, his teammate, goes through. Will there be any kind of swap? Again, we'll have to wait and see, but Trepanier jumping his teammate in the pit lane, and for the first time this race, the 87 ahead of the 89.
I need you to explain to me how many tyres you can change in 9 seconds, because I want to say the answer is only one, surely.
I don't think they would have taken tyres to
these cars went up on the jacks? Or do they only fuel on the jacks these days?
I think they only fuel. Well, I think sometimes you can see the car move, can't you, to the sides if they're changing the tyres. That might just be something that we see sometimes in NASCAR settings. But I think it'd be far too fast to change tyres. And if you're only changing one, I mean, would that be worth it at that point?
Maybe if it's the left rear and it's an outlier compared to the other 3 tyres, how much temperature it takes. Pretty sure if you see the car go up on the jacks, it's because tyres are changing. I'm thinking of the supercars, where even if you change no tyres, because of the series rules, the car goes up on the jacks to fuel. that's someone who looks like they've run out of fuel on their way to their pit stall.
Yeah, not looking too good. I'm not too sure who that is, but they're not one of the leaders. That's fair to say. Of course,
Mustang goes up on
determined. Yeah, no, of course. And just sitting there, it doesn't look good for whoever that is. But Mendonca has come out, and he did have a couple less seconds in the pit lane. There goes Trepanier, there goes Therio, but inside line for Mendonca. Has he got the lead? You bet he has. Mendonca was third all race long. Didn't take as long in the pit box as the other two drivers that he was fighting with did. And all of a sudden, Trepanier and Therio, the two teammates, have got to work their way through the number 55 of David Mendonca. And they've got 9 minutes to take back this race win.
And you're going to struggle to undercut when you take one tyre because you're going to be spending that outlap trying to warm up that particular tyre. The car will feel a little bit weird, but they're hoping for these remaining laps that it allows them to push, allows them to get to throttle well through the key corners like the final corner, like out of turn 1, particularly like out of turn 4 as well. So there's a few little places that will come to help the teammates back there in second and third, but now it's work to do.
Yeah, and definitely more than they would have wanted to do. They would have wanted to control this race from the start. That is not how it's unfolded. They have got to find a way through somehow. Good pace that it seems at the moment from Vincent Trepanier as Wesley Bryce is the final driver in pit road. These guys will all inherit the positions that they will find themselves in to fight for to the end. But with Jaden Conwright, about 3.5 seconds back from the top 3. This is a battle between the three of them, as we do see Therio give way, get past his teammate Trepanier, and Trepanier giving way to his teammate, maybe thinking that Therio may have a little bit more pace, or at least replacing the position that Trepanier gained in the pit lane.
You're just going to have to imagine that I'm stroking my beard ponderously at the moment, because that's an interesting decision, potentially just to say that maybe one driver's a bit quicker with a better chance to attack. There was a slight difference of fueling time for the two as well. So Therio, I'm seeing as having taken slightly more fuel. Maybe Trepanier can sit here and save, and Therio can go harder into the braking zones and attack more.
Let's see what these two teammates can do. Can they take back the win? Can they somehow get back to a 1-2? We're going to find out all of that in the next 7 minutes, and then the rest of whatever lap we will be on. Flashing of the lights from Luke Wallace. He's not happy about something. That is a lapped car in front of him, and that might be why as they run their way in towards the final few corners. In fact, it's not the lapped car that we saw in the pit lane. It might be. He's flashing the lights to try and get them to get out of the way, but they're not yielding in the way that I think Luke Wallace would want, and all of a sudden he's got David Holland right in his rear looking for the move and looking for P5.
Yeah, now on the front straight, the opportunity, but a little later than he would have wanted, now needing to defend in towards turn 1, or not. Or maybe he should have.
But he's just about going to get away with it. David Holland not enough of an overlap to make that move stick, and through turn 1 and turn 2 they will go. Luke Wallace stays where he is. He's not going to be a happy driver in the cockpit though after getting held up a little bit with the lapped traffic. He's going to really be defending that position hard, David Holland, you'd expect, with that information, with the knowledge that he may not be too pleased with the fact that he's lost time. We'll see if David Holland can capitalise on this. He's going to go to the inside at turn 7. This would need to be a send, but he's got a bit of an overlap. Can the man in the 28 overtake the 27? Inside is his. David Holland can try and loop it around the outside at turn 8, but I think David Holland's going to control this one. 8 is his, 9 is Holland's as they work their way through, and David Holland will control the line into turn 10, and he has P5. Luke Wallace is not going to be a happy driver in that cockpit.
Yeah, there you go. Very good work to just hold on for a couple of corners in a row to eventually get to a position where Holland could get in front, because I didn't think he had him so good through the braking zone or the corner before, but then at the third apex of that S's section, gets through and into the top 5 position, and your top 3 are getting much closer.
And they really are getting quite tightly packed, aren't they? 6/10 between all three of them, as close as we've seen them like that all race long. This time, though, as we saw for, well, not what we saw for the opening 20 laps, it's Mendonca leading the way. Here's Trepanier, his onboard, and here the cam into his sim racing room at the moment. There's maybe a little bit of communications going on between himself and Simon, and you can see a little bit of talking, but overly chatty on the radio, but they do seem calm, don't they? There's a little bit of a smile, it seems, on Trepanier's face. It doesn't seem like it's panic stations just yet, despite the fact that we've got less than 5 minutes on the clock.
Well, it's getting better the longer we go here, because they had that sort of 8, 9 tenths back, maybe struggling a little bit with their balance initially. It's really coming into their own right now as he's all over Mendonca and just needs a good run, perhaps off the final corner or off turn 5. Either way, you're in a place now where you could begin to apply the pressure here, there, and Mendonca doesn't know when or where the pressure might arrive. The element of surprise and the superior pace and speed belongs to the driver in second place at the moment.
At the moment, Therio looks like he's got all the confidence. Does he have all the speed and momentum that he needs, though, to take this race lead? He's riding the slipstream of David Mendonca, going down towards turn 1. 350 or so on the clock as they cross the line. Should be 4 more laps to go, or just about the 3 inside for Simon Therio. He couldn't quite find the line, but he really got in the mirrors of David Mendonca there, and I think David Mendonca may be aware of that and will have to drive in his mirrors a little bit more. Big send! That's not going to work. Around goes Simon Therio, and I can only say that that was maybe a little bit opportunistic, and you've got to be careful emerging back onto the racing line.
Here comes Holland and Wallace. They're going to get a couple more as well. So I was saying, you've now got this opportunity to maybe try to spring a surprise somewhere, but that was too surprising because it's just not a big enough braking zone in towards turn 4, even if you think with your pit stop strategy you're going to have more grip through there.
And it's now on Vincent Trepanier to try and make the move. I mean, Therio will say that the door got closed, but at the same time, he sent it from quite a mile back into turn 4. I don't know if he just got it all wrong on the brakes, whether that was an actually concerted effort to take the position, but you can see how far away he is from the apex. I don't think he'll be too pleased with himself about that, and you could see him getting very close to Jaden Conrad as he tried to re-emerge. He's down in P6. That could have been worse for his chances, but it's still not going to be great, as they're still fighting at the back end of the top 20 in the field. But looking up at the front here, David, all of a sudden it's Mendonca against Trepanier, and it's just going to be these two for the win. Trepanier knows that his teammate's gone around, and I don't think he'll make the same mistake that we saw Simon make.
Well, the door was open, but then he went and banged his head on the door frame in that case, I think. So that's a different teammate behind Mendonca, who's not put a foot wrong just yet, but clearly car moving around a little bit more than his rivals, particularly through long right-handers, of which that's one of them. Final corner is definitely one of them we saw can catch people out. But even turn 10 and turn 11, which is at the exit of this sequence,
Yeah, and we're seeing some of the drivers struggle a little bit on the acceleration, but most of the field have got it under wraps for the time being. Kate Middleton and Connor Wagner getting past Kevin Simpson for P10 and 11 as Simpson slips back to 12. Not too sure what's happened to the 606, but not what he would have wanted to see with Kate Middleton inside the top 10. A position he's really been fighting hard for all race long. We are going to be coming to the white flag, though. This time around, 1 minute 10 on the clock. We're not going to be able to get another full lap in. So Barney will be waving that white flag vehemently when we cross the line. Trepanier, one more chance at turn 1, one more chance at turn 7. Is he going to take it at the first time of asking? He's not quite close enough, you think, to make a send, but he's going to go for this race win. Surely he's going to look to the inside. He's going to send it late. He's going for it, Trepanier. He gets it onto the apex, and he gets it stopped and leaves a little bit of room. What a move around the outside for David Mendonca, though, as he tries to keep his foot in. Trepanier will have the inside line for 3 and 4. Won't have to lunge it in the same way that his teammate did a couple of laps ago. And can the 87 get to the lead? Not quite as they get off of turn 4. Turn 5 and turn 6 will work out for Trepanier, but they're still side by side onto this back stretch.
It gives him space for Mendonca to come back onto the racetrack, doesn't try to squeeze him out there, but once they're on the racing surface, he'll have a little bit of a door bang, and Mendonca can still defend this. But there are a few places that maybe Trepanier will have more fuel, more tyre, but they'll fight it out like men.
And they've been side by side since turn 1. I think Trapani has stolen a march. He has. He's ahead at turn 10. And can he make this advantage pay? Only a couple more corners to go. Mendonca's not got the exit he so would have desired. And for Trapani, all he needs to do is defend down into turn 12. Mendonca may launch an attack, but I don't think he's going to be able to that far back. Trapani controls it into 12. Controls it into 13. He just needs to release the car and hope Mendonca doesn't get the launch off of the corner. A final lap for the ages. What great racing between these two great drivers. Trapani saw his teammate go for the lead and spin out doing so. He was bold, he was brave into turn 1, and he is going to reap the rewards. You can see the smile on his face because Vincent Trapani wins the PRL GT3 Sprint Series for round 3 in the 2024 Season 4, and what a deserved win after an incredible race, and particularly at the end between the top two. Mendonca, of course, second, Jaden Conwright third, and a shout out to Steve Baker, who wins yet again in that category and will extend his lead at the top of that championship.
That's just a perfect final lap between those two, and Therio might be thinking what he missed out on.
Yeah, I mean, for Simon there, I mean, he was on pole as well. He was leading most of the race. Vincent gave him the chance as well by letting him pass down in towards turn 1, remember, and he just wasn't able to get it done. P6 in the end for the 89. He certainly would have wanted to be on the top step of the podium. And the rest of the drivers will run themselves across the line in this 43-strong field. It's so good to see so many drivers turn up for these events. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, we got 89 drivers through the door here at PRL. Fantastic to see everybody getting involved. 28 laps was what separated us from the checkered flag, and Vincent Trapani found it first, not by much though, 3/10 or just under that ahead of David Mendonca, who did fight it right to the end. Jaden Conrad inherited P3 after the spin from Simon Therio, but it was David Holland and Luke Wallace who also picked up the position as the 89 dropped to P6. Mick Lindfist, Eric Palacios, Sean Dickinson and Cade Middleton were in the top 10, and top 10 15 seconds. The field spread not too much of a factor in this race. Connor Wagner and Kevin Simpson were 11th and 12th, with your winner in the AM category, Steve Baker, 12th overall. 13th, I should say. Peter Nodwell and Chris Long, 14th and 15th, with Long on the podium in the AMs. Evan Mackay in 16th, and Ryan Reeves running out your AM podium in P17. Miles Brown, Noah Anderson, and Devin Brock, the rest of the top 20. Wesley Bryce, the last of the pitters, finished in 21st with Chase Wilson and Ethan Bass. Rich Calais and Elliot Budzinski, championship leader, only finishing down in P25, which I think is going to give a championship lead, very possibly, to Jaden Conwright or even Luke Wallace. It's going to be tight on that one. Andrew Chorostecki, Dakota Knapp, Richard Saavedra, Kyle Robertson and Peter Moller were the top 30 in this race, with Stephen Dunn, Joshua Spears, Jeremy Littleton and Jack Polyak, the other drivers on the lead lap. Paul Espina, Nick Ledecky a lap down, with more drivers who struggled towards the closing stages: Ryan Scalney, Adam Hemwood and Corey Saccone. JR Williams, we saw his incident about 10 laps ago, and then Calvin Mayen, Brian Krause and Chris Stewart, none of them seeing the checkered flag. Chris Stewart seemingly not seeing much of the circuit at all during that race. An incredible way to end the evening's worth of racing. We're going to be able to be joined by Vincent Trapani in the interview booth. Welcome in, Vincent. Congratulations. What a battle on that final lap. You must be absolutely thrilled.
Oh, wow. I was just, how to say it, because I was just, it was a very tough race with Mendonca just behind us. And I never, how to say it, I never expected that he was very fast after the pit stop. I think he will be behind us, but when I see him just in front of me and Simon, we was only push it, go. Yeah.
I mean, what a win from you, and the pace was electric. I mean, between you and Simon, how much communication was there? Because you looked like you were working really well as a team.
It's because Simon has a better pace than me on this track like a couple days ago. So I know I was in front of him after the pit stop, but I know he is faster than me. So I just let him go to try to make a pass on Mendonca. But unfortunately, he missed the move to the T3 T4. So unfortunately for my mate Simon, he lost a couple of positions. But Mendoka, wow, he's got a very nice pace tonight. But fortunately for me, I got him on the last lap, so it was very tricky for me. But I like it.
Yeah, but a great result, especially after the first couple of rounds, really riding a bit of a wave at the moment. Does this give you a big confidence boost going into next week? And do you think you can make it 2 from 2 there?
Yeah, I don't know, because the Porsche is very tricky in Barcelona. So on the tires, it's very hard on the tires. So we expect we will be in the top 5, but it's going to be very hard, because I know the McLaren and the BMW can be strong there. So we'll try our best, but I'm happy to get back with the Porsche in front of the field tonight. So yep.
Yeah, for now you can enjoy the win, and yeah, congratulations on it. We're delighted to see you here in the victory corner. Well done, Vincent, and hopefully you have another good race next week at Barcelona.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just say a couple of words?
Of course, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to thank all my team, Advanced Sim Racing and Advanced Motorsport, my mate Simon, and we only wanted to say our condolence for the family of and friends of Martin Crisp. So yep, I just want to say it. Yep.
Yeah, well, thanks, Vincent, and also nice to see the little tribute on all of the cars tonight. Congratulations, well done, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Brilliant to have Vincent Trepanier in winner's corner tonight. P2 man though, David, was David Mendonca, and he's with you now.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Big race for you. You've got a couple of white marks on the car after that, I reckon.
Yeah, it's been a couple of seasons since I've been on the podium, but yeah, I kind of saved as much as I could, and I was still barely able to hang on with the ASR guys, but beat him in the pit, but Simon was all over me.
What did you think about that pit lane? It's a long one. It's a kind of a narrow pit entry. I've seen a few times where drivers seem to gain a lot of position, but without having a particularly quicker pit stop, and you seemed to be the beneficiary of that this race.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like Le Mans. Like if you practice the pit a little bit, you can definitely make up a lot of time on people who haven't practiced very much. And then I was able to go one extra lap too, so I took a little bit less fuel than the other guys.
And then it was about trying to keep that race lead in the end. You got attacked twice and only lost once.
Yeah, my overlay was kind of lying to me a little bit, saying we might go an extra lap. So I was actually kind of trying to slow everybody down a little bit. And then, yeah, Simon made a move. I was just looking at the replay. It looks like he went a little hot, and we got together. And unfortunately, he spun out, which I definitely didn't want to see. And then Vincent, it was a good battle at the end there, but he was definitely faster than I was.
Yeah, difference of tyre strategy, not just a difference of fuel strategy. An interesting one in these conditions where it was partly sunny, partly cloudy, but the track relatively abrasive and slippery at all times, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of practice right from the 6 hour. And so from the start, I was just conserving tires, and I had a plan not to take any. So I was just trying to make them last as long as I could. And luckily, this was some cloud cover, so the track didn't get too crazy hot.
Well, congratulations. Couple of laps led, second place, and only just having it taken away from you on the final lap, as you had a great battle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. I mean, that's pretty much a win in my book. You know, to get podium and PRL was always a big deal. But I just want to do a quick shout out to Precision Racing League, Solpec and Abruzzi for helping out the team. Everybody at Solpec Precision Racing and everybody helping with setups. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Congrats again. See you again.
Hey, see you later. Thanks, guys.
Brilliant to talk to David Mendonca after a fantastic drive to P2 in the end. And now I believe we can talk to the P3 man, Jaden Conwright. Welcome in. Another great performance from you, picking up some more points for Phil Delez Racing, of course, leading the team's championship. How pleased are you to be on the podium after, being off the podium for quite a while and then sneaking in at the end?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a surprise. We were kind of just hanging out with the rest of everyone else, with the top 3 being the Porsches, especially even after quali. So we were kind of just running our race and hoping it came back to us because we knew we didn't have the single lap pace. So got kind of tight there with the spin from Simon, but no, happy to be back on the podium.
And you're going to be right in the title battle at the moment now with Luke Wallace. Elliot, of course, dropping a few points compared to you guys. You and Luke, I think, are going to be only separated by 1 point going to Barcelona. How much were you thinking about the championship in that race, or is it a little bit too early for you to be thinking in that mind? You're just looking to still get all the points on the board?
Yeah, honestly, I think we're just taking it one race at a time. It's still pretty early into the season. We're hoping we'd have a bit more pace, but then hopping into practice and seeing the quali, then we're kind of saw where our pace was compared to the top 3. So we were just doing what we can to salvage this race. But I mean, to be on the podium, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Which is good to hear. Looking forward, though, next week, Barcelona, is it a track that you think you're going to be fighting for the win at?
Hopefully. I guess, well, given how the pace was with some of the cars in the 6 hours, we were hoping to be fighting for the win here. But yeah, we'll definitely do our prep and show up next week, giving it our all. So hopefully we'll be fighting up front.
Congratulations again. Another podium for you, Jaden Conwright, and we might again, with that run, speak to you next week.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, guys.
To talk to Jaden Conwright there from Phil Dinez Racing, and that leads us on to the AM winner of the night. Steve Baker was our winner in the AM category, and David, you're joined by him now.
Well, a big grid, action all the way through, and lots of traffic, and an early train to contend with as well. Steve.
Sorry, was that I didn't catch the question.
I don't think it really was a question. It was more vibes based.
Oh, yeah. We started off, I thought, pretty good with a good qualifying. Was thrilled with that, and then followed it up with hitting the wall in lap 5. So mostly defending the rest of the race because the front left was pretty tore up. So, but thrilled to come out with a 13th in a tough race. And yeah, it was pretty much a train. It felt like the whole race.
Yeah, this seems like a track that keeps drivers close, but passing can be at a little bit of a premium compared to some others where, lots of slipstream to be had, but then passing can be easier, or some of the others that it really did seem like. And then with the fuel strategy to play out, that a lot of drivers didn't want to take too much risk before the pits.
Yeah, and I tried to pit early just to see what kind of damage there was, and it was a decent amount. We lost all straight line speed, so after the contact with the wall, it just became defend and try and hold the line and do the best we could. Lost a few spots, but still made it out clean.
And it's always interesting to see what models of car people have gone for. Yourself, your teammates, and the race winner with the Porsche that seemed to have worked pretty well here. Also plenty of McLarens out there as well. What led your decision making? What kind of characteristics were you focused on?
Yeah, I'm just first and foremost, I just like the Porsche the most. Bit of a Porsche fanboy, so start with that. The rest of the team already ran the Porsche, so easy to jump in that and work on sets together. And like you said, was looking forward to this one after the first 2 weeks, just with those being more top end tracks. Looking forward to coming to something that needed a bit more agility. And so yeah, Porsche felt great. Qualifying set was good, and pretty good race.
Awesome, good points, and best of luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you, guys.
Great to hear there from Steve Baker, winner in the AM category and extending that championship lead. A driver who looking to try and get himself up into that championship picture is Chris Long, who finished in P2 in the category. And Chris, I mean, a bit of a mid-pack scrap for you all the way through. You must be thrilled to be on the podium in the AM category.
Yeah, it was a little unexpected qualifying second in the AM, but to be so far back from the pole sitter, I mean, it was a super tight split, half second between the top 20. But yeah, no, it was super great.
I mean, after a difficult opening couple of rounds, I mean, fair to say that struggled a little bit in the opening race, maybe not exactly how you wanted it to go. Last week a P4 in class, this week onto the podium. I mean, are you going to be able to keep this improvement up? Maybe get the win next week?
Yeah, we'll see. I can't remember where we are next week, but yeah, hopefully it's another good track for us. And I want to thank the guys at CRC this week for giving me a good car. And yeah, we'll look on forward to the podium for next week too.
I'll tell you now, it's Barcelona. So is that good news for you? Is it a track you're looking forward to after hearing that, or is it not one that really floats your boat?
I typically try to avoid that one as much as possible, but I'll be putting the extra effort in next week for some good lap times.
Hey, we wish you the best of luck to pick up another podium. But Chris Long, congratulations, P2 in class, and a really good improvement in the championship as well. So well done.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
You too. Right, brilliant to be able to speak to all of those guys. Sadly, won't be able to get our P3 driver in the AM category, but hey, great to speak to all or most of our podium sitters here this evening. I mean, final thoughts, David, before we wrap up. I mean, what an evening of racing, clearly showing how some drivers are having to become a little bit more conservative, and how the championship picture is really setting itself out for this season.
Yeah, fantastic racing at the Brickyard, and with the 4-kilometer circuit, the laps, they get a lot into the time period, and it really created some great racing with the strategy, and then also with the conditions that had them all right on the limit of tyre heating, tyre wear, and then led to that variation of strategy where one tyre was apparently the race-winning strategy just then.
And we will be going, of course, next week to the Barcelona circuit using the historic layout, so that hairpin down at turn 10 will be in force. Can't wait to see what will happen in 7 days' time. My thanks to you, David Haynes, for joining myself, Dareth Hacker, in the commentary box. We've had Hugo Luis up in the broadcast booth, pushing all the buttons, making it look wonderful. Tomorrow night in PRL is the Truck Series. You won't want to miss that, but in 7 days' time, we're off to Barcelona in the PRL GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series. We'll see you then.